Chapter 162. Mo Jingshan's gaze was cold. Seeing Miss Han's frightened and unwilling gaze, he brought Jin Wan, who had not spoken for a long time, into his embrace. Jin Wan was silent for a moment before calmly saying, "Miss Han, you don't need to provoke me with such irrelevant words. Regardless of whether it's an ex-girlfriend or a so-called fiancé, in the face of our country's marriage laws, they are all equivalent to nothing. Do you know what a legal marriage is? Do you know what a wife is? Do I even need to tell you who this man belongs to?" Mo Jingshan lowered his eyes to look at her face. He watched as her red lips moved to and fro as she spat out these words. His eyes were filled with warmth, and there was even a faint smile on his face that could be seen by the others. Miss Han glared at her, unwilling to give up. Other people's engagement can be cancelled. So what if you're married? Aren't you still able to divorce? After Jin Wan was reborn, she was especially sensitive to the word divorce. She turned back and narrowed her eyes, coldly saying word by word, "I've already seen your sincerity in kneeling down to apologize. If you want to protect yourself, don't speak so much nonsense. No matter how much you say, isn't the result the same? You can't leave a single piece of clothing behind." From the start, Jin Wan had never intended to let her take off her clothes. Since she wanted to make things so bad, then she was the one who asked for it. Feng Ling received Jin Wan's words and stepped forward to kick Miss Han, who was trying to stand up. Miss Han knelt on the ground in pain. She wanted to say something but was abruptly cut off by the man's cold voice. Mo Jingshan's gaze was cold. His low and deep voice was cold and indifferent. "I'll give you one more minute." Miss Han's entire body trembled. She glanced at her father pleadingly. Miss Han's father wanted to speak but was blocked by several bodyguards dressed in black. He could not step forward. Miss Han dilly-dallied like this for more than a minute. She only managed to undo the zipper on her gown. Her hands were still tightly wrapped around her body. Mo Jingshan did not plan on wasting any more time here. His gaze landed on Feng Ling. Feng Ling immediately nodded in understanding. Rip! With a loud sound, Miss Han's clothes were instantly torn apart. As Miss Han screamed, Jin Wan furrowed her brows but did not speak. Mo Jingshan had already led her away from the crowd. He did not even glance in that direction. When Mo Jingshan brought her out of the crowd, Jin Wan's mind was no longer on the screams behind her. Mo Jingshan held her hand and left. He did not say another word, but her hand was held tightly by him. It had never been so tight before. It hurt a little. She raised her eyes to look at him, softly saying, "Jingshan?" Mo Jingshan paused, loosening his grip on her hand. However, he still held onto her hand, saying, "Let's go home." Jin Wan nodded. Oh. When he thought of checking to see if Miss Han had really been stripped clean, it was too late to turn back. She had already been taken out of the hotel where the banquet was held. Sheng Yihan was in the crowd, his eyes focused on the back of the woman who had disappeared in front of the door. His expression was calm, but there was a hint of a seductive smile at the corner of his mouth. By the time they returned to the Yu Garden, it was already very late. Auntie Chen had already fallen asleep. Mo Jingshan opened the bedroom windows. The cool night breeze blew in. The man's short black hair was blown into a rare mess, but it did not lose his elegance. Jin Wan came out of the shower. Although he did not turn back to look at her, he still closed the windows the moment she stepped out of the bathroom to prevent her from catching a cold. "I didn't eat much tonight. You didn't eat either, did you?" Jin Wan asked. The man's warm and deep gaze turned over. He calmly watched her for several seconds, his gaze carrying a penetrating scrutiny. After a moment, under her clear eyes, he calmly spat out a few words, "Don't you have anything to ask me?" Jin Wan really did have something to ask, but when the words reached her lips, she hesitated. The so-called past that Shuyan once mentioned was most likely related to Mo Jingshan's engagement. Although she was not too clear about his past in America, she was certain that since Mo Jingshan did not deny this matter tonight, it meant that it was true. Since he had given her the opportunity to ask, she was certainly not willing to keep a knot in her heart. Jin Wan walked over and stood before him, asking, "Before me, did you love any other woman?" Mo Jingshan rested one hand on the railing by the window, leaning against the blue reflection of the swimming pool in the Yu Garden. He watched her, raised his hand and rubbed it against her damp hair that she had just showered. "No," he answered. Jin Wan did not ask another word and directly smiled. "Then I have nothing to ask." Seeing the woman's attitude, Mo Jingshan chuckled softly. He raised his hand to unbutton the top 3 buttons of his shirt. "Hungry? What do you want to eat?" "Go take a shower first. Auntie Chen is already asleep. I'll go cook 2 bowls of noodles." Although it's not as good as yours, at least it's edible. Jinwan spoke and turned to bring out his clothes, urging him to take a shower. Mo Jingshan looked at her frank and clean gaze. After a moment he took the clothes. All right. Jinwan was in the kitchen watching the boiling water in the pot. It was not until the water had boiled for a long time that she remembered to put the noodles in. After hearing the sound, Auntie Chin got up and put on a coat to help her cook. Jinwan declined and asked Auntie Chin to go back to her room to rest. After cooking the noodles, she picked up a tray, put the 2 bowls of noodles on it and carried them up. She had just returned to the room to put down the tray in her hands when she turned back to see the bathroom door open. The man casually wrapped a white bath towel around his waist. His skin was healthy and slightly whiter than the standard healthy man's, but he did not look feminine at all. His body was so standard that it could be described as perfect. His muscles were well defined and there were still water droplets rolling down his chest, hidden in the bath towel. Although they had lived together for so long, every time Jinwan saw this scene, she still wanted to push him back into the bathroom and let him put on his clothes before coming out. Then try it. Ever since I ate the noodles you made that time, I haven't cooked noodles for a long time. Jinwan sat by the table as she spoke. She picked up her chopsticks and tasted a mouthful. Thankfully, when she was in the kitchen earlier, aside from being slightly distracted when boiling the water, she paid attention to the hardness of the noodles and did not cook them too badly. Although the taste was not as good as Mo Jingshan's, it was not bad either. Mo Jingshan glanced at her and was about to walk over when the little woman's mouth was full of noodles. She looked at him with her cheeks puffed up, saying vaguely, "Put on your clothes first." Mo Jingshan watched her eating manner and smiled. The windows were open earlier, so the room was slightly cold. He glanced at her again and turned to put on a bathrobe. Chapter 163. Let me try. Mo Jingshan walked over. Jinwan pushed the other bowl toward him, indicating for him to have a taste. However, the man pressed her outstretched hand down, lowering his head to kiss her lips that were still stained with broth. Jinwan, after sweeping away the taste of the broth in her mouth, he finally released her, mildly commenting, "It's not bad. The broth is delicious and very flavorful." Jinwan, this man was simply too much. He even wanted to take advantage of her while eating noodles. At night, Jinwan lifted the blanket to get off the bed. The moment she lifted the blanket, it was covered again. Jinwan frantically said, "I'm tired to death." She did not put any medicine in the noodles, yet she was bullied by Mo Jingshan for an entire night. Even now, her face was still red from the intense entanglement. She blushed and wanted to get up to drink some water. In the end, Mo Jingshan easily pulled her back. Jinwan's entire body was sore and weak. She curled up under his body and did not move. "Are you really tired?" He kissed the corner of her lips. "I still have things to do in the studio tomorrow. You have to at least let me get out of bed," Jinwan said with resentment and anger. The man rubbed her head and carried her to take a shower. When he returned, he tucked her under the blanket and went to the study. Jinwan did not ask why he went to the study so late at night. She was really too tired. She flipped over, hugged the blanket and fell asleep. When it was almost dawn, she suddenly woke up with a start. She reached to the side and felt the coldness of the bed. Mo Jingshan still had not returned to bed. She turned to look in the direction of the study. The light in the study was still on. 2 days later, it was said to be Nan Heng's birthday. Coincidentally, Nan Heng had just returned from America. Mo Jingshan had called to inform Jinwan that he would bring her to Zijing Cheng Club that night. Because the studio needed to receive many representatives from large real estate companies, Jinwan was busy until late. She knew the location of Zijing Cheng Club and did not ask Mo Jingshan to pick her up. Instead, she had Feng Ling accompany her. After she was done with her work, they would head over together. Amethyst Town Clubhouse was the largest gathering place for the upper class in High City. Only people with platinum and diamond cards could enter. Because of this, even though the nightlife and entertainment programs were plentiful, there were very few illegal people who could sneak in. Every high-class private room was guarded by a waiter and security guards. Why didn't Jinwan come along? Qin Siding sat on the sofa in the private room and glanced at Mo Jingshan, who was sitting alone, with a funny expression. Nan Heng also turned his eyes, a hint of mockery on his handsome face. "I was just about to ask, you're just short of hanging Jinwan on your waist and bringing her with you every day. You actually didn't let anyone follow you today?" Mo Jingshan calmly replied, "She's busy." Qin Siding mocked, "Your woman is busier than you? Is there a problem?" Mo Jingshan coldly glanced at him. A frivolous smile appeared on Qin Siding's face. He stretched out his long legs and casually leaned back on the sofa. He sneered. So it's your woman who isn't willing to be a good wife at home and wants to grow wings and fly out? Why didn't you stop her? Aren't you afraid that if she really achieves something, there will be more and more men behind her in the future? Good wife. Nan Heng was confused. When did she become associated with these three words? Speaking of this, Qin Siding glanced at Nan Heng with some smugness. You're the one who didn't have the fortune to taste it. Not long ago, Jin Wan personally went to my house to make the fruit and vegetable salad and the 3 kinds of cold vegetables. The taste was really not bad. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a person who always shielded her, I would have been able to taste even more of her cooking. That big miss now knows how to cook. It doesn't seem too strange to use these 3 words on her. Nan Heng chuckled lightly, lazily asking, Are you serious? Mo Jingshan glanced at the time. When he spoke again, his tone was cold and sharp. He played down his words. What nonsense are you talking about? Did you arrange to meet here just to hear the 2 of you care about my woman? Nan Heng, Qin Siding smiled mysteriously. You'll get used to it. Nan Heng's smoking addiction was great. Not long after, the private room was filled with smoke. Mo Jingshan had also drunk quite a bit earlier, but he was not drunk. He glanced at the time, stood up, and went to the restroom. Several minutes later, several young ladies in Xi Jingqing Club were attracted by the man who had just walked out of the restroom. The drunken ladies egged each other on as they followed him. They secretly made bets to see who would be able to sleep with such a rare quality tonight. Mo Jingshan sensed that there were people following him. Seeing that they were several drunk ladies, he did not pay them any attention. When he entered the private room, he saw that quite a bit of wine had been brought in on the coffee table. There were red, blue, yellow, and all sorts of colors. He closed the door and was about to walk over when all of a sudden, the door behind him was slammed open. The sound of the door was too loud. Mo Jingshan's clear gaze turned back. Even Nan Heng and Qin Siding in the private room raised their brows, looking at the drunken ladies by the door. Seeing this situation, Qin Siding instantly understood. He chuckled softly and whistled. Yo, you're being pestered again. If Jin Wan were to see this, I wonder if she would be jealous. Mo Jingshan pretended not to hear Qin Siding's words. His gaze coldly swept over the few young ladies whose faces clearly showed that they wanted to sleep with him. Get out. His voice did not contain any warmth. The few young ladies all reeked of alcohol. Originally they were quite bold, but the moment they saw the coldness in his eyes as well as the man's cold, icy aura, they all cowered. Only one of the young ladies was pushed out. It was unknown whether it was because her face was too red or because she had drunk too much, but she stared at him with a red face. Her mouth stuttered as she squeezed out a complete sentence. I think you're very handsome. I like you, so, can you? No. His cold and indifferent voice was as cold as frost. It was cold, straightforward, and decisive. The few young ladies immediately stared at him with defeated expressions. They had thought that they would be able to have an extremely romantic encounter, but who would have thought that it was actually an iceberg? By the side, the security guards had already heard the commotion and were about to chase them away. The few young ladies originally wanted to say something more, but they were directly slammed out by the door in front of them with a pung. Outside the door, there was a moment of silence. Then there was the sound of the security guards chasing them away. However, there was a sudden burst of laughter from inside the door. As expected of COMO. Your luck with women is not as good as before. Nan Heng held a cigarette in his mouth, smiling with narrowed eyes. Too much nonsense. Mo Jingshan did not look at them. He picked up his phone and called Jin Wan. Chapter 164. The domestic property industry would have more and more room to grow. She and BGY's CEO sat in the conference room, sharing their opinions on the domestic property industry. Every word Jin Wan said hit the nail on the head, causing BGY's CEO to anticipate the next collaboration with Mo Nguyen Studio even more. Just as they were chatting excitedly, the phone on the conference table began to vibrate. Jin Wan did not look at the caller ID and casually hung up the call. She then continued to speak with a smile. In Xi Jingqing Club, Mo Jingshan heard the sound of the call being hung up and glanced at the phone screen. Nan Heng glanced at the man who had yet to step out of the private room with his phone in his hand. He asked with a teasing expression, "What's with that expression? Did Jin Wan hang up on you?" Mo Jingshan did not speak. This little woman had really learned to hang up on him? Earlier on, when Qin Siding said that he had actually allowed Jin Wan to grow a pair of wings and fly away, he finally began to consider this matter. The 20-year-old Jinwan still had too much room to learn and grow. Thinking of the day when she truly grew up and was reborn, transforming into the so-called COG that he would no longer be able to control, Mo Jingshan narrowed his eyes slightly. Qin Siding sat calmly on the other side of the sofa, drinking his wine. He gently swirled the white wine in his glass, smiling. Jinwan is truly the first person who dares to hang up on you. When she comes, I'll have to praise her properly. She's really good. Qin Siding paused for a moment before speaking again. It's already late. Don't let anything happen. Should we go take a look at her? Nan Heng glanced at the time. With Feng Ling by her side, there won't be any problems. This call was definitely hung up on her. I placed my most capable assistant by his woman's side. If something still happens, wouldn't I be letting down the many years of nurturing Feng Ling down? Mo Jingshan walked over. Before returning to the sofa, he kicked away Nan Heng's leg that was placed on the crystal coffee table. After sitting down, he said indifferently, "If I don't get Feng Ling away from your side, I'm afraid you'll die in her hands." Nan Heng suddenly choked on a mouthful of smoke. He coughed until his eyes became bloodshot before he said with difficulty, "What the F***ck do you mean I'll die in her hands?" Mo Jingshan coldly sneered. "It seems like you've been very free recently." "What? I'm very free. Do you want to fight me?" Nan Heng narrowed his eyes with a cigarette in his mouth. "Don't you too. If you want to kill each other, stay away from me. I don't want to drag two seriously injured patients back to the hospital in the middle of the night. It's rare that I'm not on the night shift today." Half an hour later, Jinwan finally appeared at Zijing Qing Club. The security guard led the way to the designated private room. Pushing the door open, he saw that the private room inside was very spacious. There were sofas, coffee tables, vertical microphones, and many other facilities that only high-class clubs would have. There were only 3 people sitting inside. Mo Jingshan, Nan Heng, and Qin Siding. Right now, Qin Siding could be considered an old acquaintance. To Jinwan, Nan Heng was someone she had only heard of but never met. It was said that he usually stayed in America for a longer period of time and was involved in the arms business. He had once made a name for himself in Haicheng and later on became famous in America. The moment she opened the door, Mo Jingshan's heavy eyes turned toward her. He said, "Nuan, come over and sit." Jinwan nodded and was about to go over when she abruptly saw Nan Heng's unbearable expression. It was as though he had goosebumps. "I say, you guys, you can kiss me however you want at home. Can't you take note that this is a public place?" Nan Heng coldly reprimanded. After knowing Mo Jingshan for so many years, they had never seen him take such initiative toward anyone, much less in such an intimate and passionate manner. It really broke through the limits of what they could accept. Mo Jingshan coldly glanced at him. "Move your feet away." Nan Heng. He really wanted to curse but he endured it. He turned to see that Jinwan had already walked over. Nan Heng's feet were placed on the coffee table, blocking the way. As he retracted his feet, he glanced toward the door. After sending Jinwan to the door, Feng Ling dutifully stood outside the door. She turned to stand with the bodyguards by the door. "What are you standing outside for? Come in." Nan Heng suppressed his voice. It was cold and commanding. Earlier, Jinwan had also planned to let Feng Ling in, but Feng Ling did not enter. She had just sat down by Mo Jingshan's side when she raised her eyes to speak to Feng Ling outside the door. "That's right. Come in. It's not like you're an outsider." Feng Ling remained standing outside the door. She did not speak. Her gaze swept past Nan Heng's face, but it was only a calm and indifferent glance. She did not greet her former boss and shifted her gaze back to Jinwan. "This kind of occasion is not suitable for me. Mrs. Mo, I'll stand guard outside the door. Call me if there's anything." After speaking, she directly closed the door from the outside. There was a strange silence in the private room. Jinwan was used to Feng Ling's cold and stubborn temper. Seeing that the door had already been closed from the outside, she did not force it further. Mo Jingshan watched Jinwan's face and handed the wine list on the coffee table to her. "What do you want to drink?" Jinwan lowered her head to look at the wine list and then at the many good wines on the coffee table. She smiled to say, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. There's so much wine. I'll just drink with you." In the end, Mo Jingshan took the wine list from her hand and pressed the bell to call the bar's waiter in. He ordered a cup of hot juice and a fruit platter for her. Only after the waiter took the order and left did Mo Jingshan say, "I've said it before. In the future, don't even think about touching wine. I can't drink much, not even a sip." Ever since Feng Ling closed the door, Nan Heng's expression had been dark. Even now, he could hear the two of them still crazily showing off their affection. Unable to tolerate it, he glanced at Jinwan and sneered, "Earlier on, didn't this woman have the guts to hang up on you? In the blink of an eye, she's become a little sweetheart? Even a cup of juice has to be heated. How delicate is she?" Qin Siding casually poured the wine. "I've already seen it. You still need to get used to it. But from a medical point of view, women should drink less cold and try to drink more hot. It's good for the body." Nan Hung coldly scolded, narrowing his eyes to sneer. "As expected, you've been tormented badly. Your mind is so muddled that you're about to cheer for this couple." Qin Siding's smile was still casual. "Do you think it's easy for your brother? I think I've most likely been abused by the two of them for so long that I've developed Stockholm Syndrome. I'm used to it. If they don't abuse me for 2 days, I won't be able to get used to it." Nan Hung leaned against the sofa and changed the topic, coldly saying, "You want to be abused that much? All right, I'll grant you your wish." Qin Siding raised his eyes to look at him. "Grant what?" Chapter 165. She hung up on Mo Jingshan's call? Jinwan picked up her phone and saw that there was indeed a missed call from him. She whispered to the man sitting by her side, "Earlier on, I was talking to someone from BGY Group and didn't notice that it was you who called me. I directly hung up and rushed over afterward. I didn't look at my phone at all." Mo Jingshan glanced at her, asking softly, "Did you succeed?" Jinwan nodded at him happily. She raised her hand and gestured 2 with one hand and 8 with the other. She winked at him. "After selling this amount and tossing aside the cost, the money we earn should be enough to temporarily hand in a satisfactory answer to your father, right?" Mo Jingshan's gaze was deep as he pressed her hand down. "Even if you can't hand in this answer, he can't touch you. There's no need to work so hard." Hearing this, Qin Siding smiled. "What? Hasn't Director Mo already returned to America? He still hasn't let Jinwan off?" Mo Jingshan did not look at Qin Siding. Instead, he lowered his head to look at Jinwan. "Have you eaten tonight?" "No, I was just about to say." Jinwan glanced at the various types of alcohol on the coffee table. "Isn't today Nan Heng's birthday? I've been here for so long. Why haven't I seen any cake?" She had thought that she would be able to eat a few bites of cake. Furthermore, she had rushed over after finishing her work and did not even have a bite of rice. Qin Siding raised his brows, casually saying, "I just finished an operation at the hospital and drove over. Where would I have the time to buy a cake?" Jinwan faltered for a moment before turning to look at Mo Jingshan. Mo Jingshan mildly glanced at her. "Do I look like someone who would specially buy a cake to celebrate a man's birthday?" Jinwan pursed her lips. "Then what should we do? Even if you don't like to eat cake since it's your birthday, there has to be some form. If I had known earlier, I would have given you a call earlier. Earlier on, I happened to pass by a pretty good cake shop." "Which shop?" "Get your female bodyguard to buy it," Qin Siding said. When Nan Hung heard the words female bodyguard, he coldly glanced at him. "There's no need. Someone will come later. She will probably buy it." "Oh, aren't there just a few of us today?" Qin Siding glanced at him. Nan Hung smiled and casually leaned back on the sofa. He glanced at Qin Siding without saying a word. His gaze seemed to be saying, "Brat, just wait to be tortured." Qin Siding's handsome brows moved. After a moment of silence, he seemed to have thought of something and his face suddenly turned cold. "You can't be." Suddenly, the door to the private room was pushed open, and a figure carrying an exquisite cake box appeared in front of the door. Jinwan looked straight ahead. It was a woman. Her figure was slim and slender, her skin was fair, and her eyes were calm and gentle. She should be about the same age as Jinwan. Her long, slightly curly hair was spread out behind her back. She had an outstanding temperament but did not have much lethality. She was carrying a large cake box in her hand. "Sorry I'm late." The young woman came in with a natural and appropriate smile. She glanced at the faces of the people on the sofa and paused a little longer on Qin Siding's cold face, but only for a fraction of a second. Then she looked at Nan Heng and Mo Jingshan with a smile. At the same time she smiled at Jinwan. "Hello, you're Jinwan, right? We've met before but you definitely don't remember. I'm sure Nianj." "Monsieur?" Hearing this, Jinwan finally had an impression. Shi Nianj, the daughter of Hai Cheng's Shida International Group. She was 2 years older than Jinwan. The Shi family lived in America and their domestic company was in Hai Cheng. Jinwan had indeed met her before, but it was only when Jinwan and Ji Hongwen attended a banquet several years ago. There was even a rumor that Shi Nianj was the only one who could compare to Jinwan in terms of beauty. If it weren't for the fact that the Shi family was not in Haicheng, the two of them would definitely be the two most famous flowers in Haicheng. The two did not have much contact. When Shi Niange was in Haicheng, Jin Wan was studying abroad. When Jin Wan returned, Shi Niange had already returned to America. Otherwise they might have become very good friends. Jin Wan stood up, took the cake for her and placed it on the coffee table. She said sincerely, "It's really been many years since we last met. Miss Shi, why have you returned? Will you settle in Haicheng or return to America?" "The Shi family's domestic headquarters will remain in Haicheng. Perhaps I will stay, but there may also be other changes." As Shi Niange spoke, she glanced at Nan Heng. "I brought the cake so late. I didn't spoil your mood, did I?" "No, you came just in time. Mrs. Mo was just complaining about why there was no cake," Nan Heng said, his gaze meaningfully glancing at Qin Siding, who had not spoken a single word. Jin Wan felt that the atmosphere was different from what she had expected. She glanced at Nan Heng and then at Qin Siding. She felt that Qin Siding seemed to be surrounded by a cold aura, suppressing a gloomy coldness that she had never seen before. She turned to look at Mo Jingshan. Mo Jingshan did not even raise his eyes. He continued drinking the wine in his glass, clearly unconcerned. "I ordered the cake yesterday. Earlier on, when I was about to collect it, I found out that their dessert chef had applied for a leave and would only be back in the afternoon. He only started making it in the afternoon, so I waited for a long time." As Shi Niange spoke, she opened the cake box with a smile. She said to Jin Wan, "When did Miss Ji get married? I didn't even get a cup of wedding wine to drink." As she spoke, she glanced at Mo Jingshan. "CO Mo didn't even send a wedding invitation to our Shi family. Isn't that too ungrateful? Sit down and talk." Mo Jingshan indicated for them to sit down. Jin Wan and Shi Niange opened the cake together and took out the candles. She then pulled Shi Niange to sit by the side. All of a sudden, Qin Siding stood up, picked up his coat from the sofa and said coldly and casually, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first." Shi Niange paused, standing by the sofa without moving. However, Jin Wan turned to look at the man with a cold expression. She also felt that the atmosphere was not right. Her gaze moved from Qin Siding's back to Shi Niange's slightly stiff and pale face. What was going on? Qin Siding left very decisively. He did not even look back. When he closed the door from outside, he used a lot of force. The door was basically slammed shut by him. The waiter, who was carrying hot fruit juice and a fruit platter in, was startled by the sound of the door opening and almost dropped it. Outside the door, Feng Ling saw Qin Siding walk out with a heavy expression and stood silently by the side. Jin Wan turned to look at Nan Heng and Mo Jingshan. "What happened? Dr. Qin left just like that? You didn't stop him?" Chapter 166. Based on a woman's intuition, Jin Wan felt that there was a story between Shi Niange and Qin Siding. At this moment, Mo Jingshan opened his mouth, coldly and indifferently. "What are you thinking? You brought her here?" "I've interacted with Miss Shi in America before. After all, we're old acquaintances. It's my birthday and she wants to send me a cake. Although I understand that she didn't come here to celebrate my birthday, I can't possibly reject her." Nan Heng puffed out a smoke ring, coldly smiling. "She's the one who refused to give up. She knows old Qin's temper better than us. She should know the consequences of coming here today." Nan Heng then glanced at Shi Niange, who had been standing there silently. "Back then, the one who provoked him was you. The one who left as he pleased was also you. Now that you're back, even though you know his attitude, you still insisted on coming. Now do you see it? He won't even look at you again." Shi Niange did not speak. When Jin Wan reached out to hold her hand out of concern, she only curved her lips slightly. Her gaze was hidden in the shadows of the private room, and her emotions could not be discerned. At this moment, outside the private room, a commotion came from afar. It sounded like a woman's sharp cries and screams, as well as the sound of many people's footsteps. Qin Siding had not walked far out of the private room. He did not stop because of the gathering crowd and the cries. However, as he walked past the crowd, he abruptly heard the sound of a woman being slapped. Accompanied by several men's roguish curses, he expressionlessly turned to look at the crowd. He abruptly saw the woman lying on the ground in a sorry state. His cold eyes slowly narrowed. He pushed aside the people in front of him and turned to walk over. The commotion outside was not small. Many people in the private room came out to see the situation. Shi Niange opened the door to the private room and saw Qin Siding from afar. Jin Wan saw the crowd there and subconsciously walked out with Shi Niange. No matter how strict the management of Zijing Cheng Club was, It was still a nightclub. It was not safe for two women to go out. Mo Jingshan stood up and went over. Nan Heng could only extinguish his cigarette, furrowing his brows as he went out to check on the situation. In the crowd, a young woman was lying on the ground. She had just been slapped twice and her clothes were a little messy. Her shoulders were half exposed as if she had almost been molested. Her hair was also unusually messy, almost covering half of her face. However, one could still see that her face was pale with fright, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Shirnianj had just walked into the crowd when she saw the woman on the ground. Her calm expression changed slightly. She subconsciously raised her eyes to look at the cold Qin sighting. Jinwan paused in her steps. When Mo Jingshan came over, she turned back to whisper to him, "What happened tonight? I don't seem to understand it." Mo Jingshan had already seen the situation in the crowd. He held her hand and did not let her go to the front. He said mildly, "Qin sighting has his own business. You don't have to care." Jinwan, which woman doesn't have a burning desire for gossip? Jinwan could only turn her head to look. Nan Heng stood at the side, arms crossed over his chest and said coldly in a low voice, "What an unexpected coincidence today. Qin sighting's two old loves are both here." Old love? Or two? Jinwan looked in surprise at Shirnianj in front of her, and then at the young woman on the ground who was surrounded by the crowd. Then Jinwan's gossipy eyes turned to Nan Heng. Nan Heng coldly sneered. The only person this old Qin has ever loved is Shirnianj. But right now it's not clear whether he loves her or not, but he definitely hates her. Nan Heng coldly glanced at the woman on the ground in the crowd. This is Ling Xianer. About 4 or 5 years ago she had an engagement with Qin sighting. The engagement was arranged by the Qin family, but Qin sighting rejected it and it was cancelled a long time ago. This Ling Xianer is very infatuated with Qin sighting. She is young and very good at causing trouble. After being rejected, she cried, threw a tantrum and threatened to hang herself. Qin sighting did not even spare her a glance. From then on, the Ling family's relationship with the Qin family gradually worsened, and they no longer had any contact. As Nan Heng spoke, Shirnianj stood by the side and could more or less hear him. However, she did not move, only looking in Qin sighting's direction. Nan Heng appeared to be watching the show. "Miss Ji, no matter how oblivious you are to the outside world, you should know that at the beginning of this year Haicheng's largest electronics company, the Ling Group, announced bankruptcy. Several of the board members of the Ling Group made a wrong decision, causing the company to collapse. Not only did it go bankrupt but it also owes a huge debt. No one knows how this Ling Xianer was sold here, but from the looks of it, the people by the side should be her buyers. She should have just escaped." Jinwan's hand suddenly grew cold. She had experienced this before, so she understood the horror and helplessness of it all too well. This was the reality of the world. How many people were watching a big company from behind? Once it was down, there was no need to ask for help. As long as it didn't make things worse, it was already very good. Sensing Jinwan's sudden silence, Mo Jingshan held her hand in his palm. "It has nothing to do with you. Don't let your imagination run wild." Ling Xianer was forced to retreat step by those men. She laid on the ground and carefully shifted her body to the side. Her eyes were filled with fear and despair. Jinwan felt as though she was looking at herself from her previous life. Mo Jingshan's gaze remained on her face. Seeing that her face was gradually turning pale, he asked softly, "Are you not feeling well?" Jinwan composed herself. "Perhaps there are too many people here and I'm a little lacking in oxygen. I'm fine." "Stop looking. Let's go back." Mo Jingshan directly grabbed her hand, wanting to bring her away. At this moment, Ling Xianer, who was on the ground, suddenly cried out in pain. A man dragged her back several meters and stepped on her calf. Jinwan turned back to see the drunken and malevolent man standing there scolding, "Smelly whore, why are you pretending to be a chaste woman after taking this old man's money? 80,000 yuan to buy your first night is already giving your Ling family some face. Otherwise people might not even be willing to pay 8,000 for a night. Since you've already been sold and your clothes have already been changed, why are you still pretending?" Ling Xianer lay on the ground crying, shaking her head non-stop. "I'm not selling. I'm not the one receiving the money. Please let me go. I beg you." The last sound was because the man had harshly stepped on her calf. Chapter 167. "I'm begging you to let me go." Beg? If begging was useful, your family wouldn't have gone bankrupt. The man laughed coldly as he grabbed her hair harshly. "We've waited in the room for so long and King ran off just like that? Dampening our mood isn't as simple as returning 80,000 yuan. You want your freedom, right? Then ask the people around you. Those who are able to come to Xijingcheng don't lack money. Who do you think will buy you? My price isn't high either. 10 times. How about it? 800,000 yuan. Ling Xianer cried out in despair. Her sharp cries only attracted the attention of the surrounding people. No one stepped forward. Jin Wan trembled when she heard the cries. The scenes from her past life that she had tried so hard to forget kept drilling into her mind, making it hard for her to breathe. She suppressed her heartbeat that was about to jump to her throat. She could not help but turn back and push the crowd aside. She was about to shout that she would buy it. Wasn't it just 800,000 yuan? She would buy it. I'll buy it. Suddenly someone spoke up. However, this voice did not come from Jin Wan. It was Qin Siding. The moment she heard this name, Ling Xianer raised her disheveled face in disbelief. When she saw that it was Qin Siding in the crowd, she immediately burst into tears. Her tears were filled with sorrow and despair, as though she had finally found a glimmer of hope. That kind of complicated sorrow was indescribable. The moment Qin Siding spoke, Shi Nian's gaze shifted in his direction. It was as though something was gradually shattering in her eyes. However, Qin Siding did not even glance at her. He only coldly said, "I've bought it. Why aren't you letting her go?" Those who were able to appear in Xijingcheng's clubhouse were all people of high status. The Qin family was one of Hai Cheng's 4 largest families. They were naturally prominent. The man who grabbed Ling Xianer recognized Qin Siding. The curses he was about to spit out were immediately swallowed back. He asked with some suspicion, "Young Master Qin? Are you sure you want to buy her?" "I won't repeat myself." Qin Siding's eyes were cold. The man could only let go. The moment Ling Xianer regained her freedom, she stumbled towards Qin Siding and then stumbled in front of him. Qin Siding expressionlessly avoided her outstretched hand and did not let her touch him. He maintained a distance, but he threw the jacket in the crook of his arm to Ling Xianer, who almost had half her body exposed. Ling Xianer's entire body trembled, and she didn't dare to touch him again. She hurriedly wrapped his jacket around her body, then carefully shrunk her head and hid behind him, instinctively seeking his protection. The surrounding spectators had already begun to whisper among themselves. They were discussing how Ling Xianer seemed to have been engaged to this young master of the Qin family in the past. Although the two of them didn't succeed, they didn't think that after so many years, young Master Qin would still be so loyal. Shi Nian had been watching Qin Siding the entire time. When Ling Xianer ran behind him, her eyes were still fixed in his direction. However, Qin Siding did not look at her at all. The crowd gradually dispersed and this farce finally came to an end. Jin Wan turned to realize that Shi Nian had already left without her noticing. When did Miss Shi leave? The scene earlier was enough to shred her heart into 1,000 pieces. She still hasn't left. Could it be that she wants to stand here and wait for us to say a few hypocritical words of comfort to her? Nan Heng stood by the side, holding a bronze-colored lighter in his hand as he absent-mindedly played with it. As he spoke, he glanced at Jin Wan. "Your complexion is indeed not good. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that the person who was pressed to the ground and bullied was not that Miss Ling, but you." Mo Jingshan's gaze remained on Jin Wan's brows. "Are you still not feeling well?" He did see that Jin Wan's complexion was different from usual. The emotions that flashed across her eyes did not escape his eyes. Jin Wan shook her head, indicating that she was fine. She then turned to glare at Nan Heng, whose words had almost hit her weak spot. "Earlier, I just couldn't bear to watch any longer. The people in this club are all wealthy and respectable. Just eating a seafood meal flown in from overseas can cost several 100,000 yuan. Earlier, when a life could have been saved, no one helped out." Nan Heng spread his hands. "The business world is a place that eats people's blood. These are all nobles who have made their way through society. Everyone knows who they can't touch. She's just a young lady from a bankrupt company. The Ling family is gradually declining due to revenge, so there are many potential enemies. Who would offend someone for such a useless young lady?" Jin Wan's red lips curved. Her smile was mild. "You guys really know how to find a suitable excuse for your cold-blooded and heartless actions." Nan Heng raised his brows, chuckling. "When did Miss Ji become someone who hates evil so much?" Jin Wan did not say more, but it was clear that she was not in a good mood. Nan Heng sneered and walked back. "What a mess. I haven't even celebrated my F***king birthday, and I'm already here to watch this kind of melodramatic drama at 8 o'clock. Let old Qin deal with it himself. Didn't they say that women would be in a good mood after eating cake?" Miss G, let's go back to the private room to eat the cake. Jinwan, what a big heart. Mo Jingshan did not look at Nanheng. He lowered his eyes to look at Jinwan. Do you want to go home or eat cake? Let's eat the cake. Even though Miss Sher has left, she still bought this cake specially for us. It'll be a waste if we don't eat it. In order to eat a few pieces of cake, Jinwan dragged Mo Jingshan back to the private room. She originally wanted Nanheng, who was celebrating his birthday today, to cut the cake. However, Nanheng threw the knife and fork in front of her. If you want to eat it, cut it yourself. I'm not interested in sweet things like this. Seeing that Mo Jingshan had no intention of eating it, Jinwan cut a few pieces herself and tasted the cream that she accidentally spilled on her fingers. Very sweet. It was cherry-flavored and there was even a hint of cherry wine in the cream. Nanheng and Mo Jingshan chatted about their business dealings. In the meantime, a waiter would occasionally come in to deliver wine and fruit juice for Jinwan. Jinwan did not eat tonight, so she finished half of the 10-inch double-layered cake by herself. She also drank 3 to 4 glasses of fruit juice. Even when it ended, Shi Nianj did not return. Qin's sightings' whereabouts were also unknown. They were about to leave the private room and Jinwan followed them. However, when she stood up, she leaned against Mo Jingshan's body. Her steps were light, and her cheeks were slightly red. Her gaze was hazy as she lazily leaned against his shoulder. Mo Jingshan saw that she was clearly slightly drunk and directly held her to prevent her from falling. His cold brows furrowed. He clearly did not expect that she could get drunk like this. Is she drunk? Nanheng was about to leave when he turned back to take a look. Chapter 168. Nanheng snorted. In a place like Zijing City there has never been any pure fruit juice. The so-called fruit juice also contains very low alcohol content, around 6 to 10 degrees. It's basically impossible to taste. But if you can get drunk like this, how bad is your alcohol tolerance, Miss G? Jinwan opened her eyes in a daze to look at Mo Jingshan. Is that so? Mo Jingshan did not speak. As he supported her, his indifferent gaze shifted to the remaining half of the cake on the coffee table. Nanheng seemed to have thought of something. He first looked at Jinwan's slightly drunk appearance, then at the cake and walked over. He cut a piece into his mouth, took 2 bites and swallowed, enduring the unbearably sweet taste. He turned back to look at the person by the door and sneered. There's fruit wine in this cream. The alcohol content isn't low. Together with her fruit juice, it's no wonder she's so drunk. Jinwan tried her best to open her eyes, raising her brows to say, "Ah, I remember now. There really is a very special cake shop in Haicheng. Every day there are always people lining up to buy the cake. It's said that the cream in that shop usually contains some carefully brewed high-end fruit wine. No wonder the taste is different. It's really delicious." As she spoke, she pressed her face against Mo Jingshan's shoulder with a grin, softly saying, "In the future I still want to eat it, when it's my birthday. I still want to eat this cake." No matter how much he calculated, in the end she was still drunk on the cake. Mo Jingshan supported her, pressing her firmly by his side. He coldly said, "With your alcohol tolerance, you better stay away from that cake shop in the future." "No, I want to eat it on my birthday." Jinwan raised her misty eyes and raised a finger, giggling at him. "I want to eat it again. I don't want 2 layers. Just 1 layer, all right? It's fine if I eat a little less." Mo Jingshan did not speak. She pressed against his arm again, hugging him with both hands. "All right. I'll eat it on my birthday, only on my birthday." Mo Jingshan had no choice but to bend slightly toward her. Watching this drunken little woman, he softly sighed and kissed the tip of her nose. "All right." Nanheng pressed the space between his eyebrows and crossed his arms over his chest as he leaned against the decorative pillar in the private room. After knowing Mo Jingshan for so many years, she had never seen him treat anyone so gently and patiently. Feng Ling walked in from the door. "Mr. Mo, shall I send you and Mrs. Mo back?" "There's no need. The Yu garden is very close to here," Mo Jingshan said indifferently. Nanheng also drank quite a bit. "Send him back." Feng Ling's expression did not change. After a few seconds of silence, she said, "All right, Mr. Mo." Jinwan was brought to the car by Mo Jingshan. She was not very drunk, but she sat lazily and pressed her head against the window. Realizing that the person driving was Mo Jingshan and not Feng Ling, Jinwan narrowed her eyes and glanced at the handsome man in the driver's seat. She then leaned toward him. "Sit properly, I'm driving." Mo Jingshan was about to push her back. However, Jinwan hugged his arm and moved closer to his side. She pressed her face against his neck and softly asked, "Is my alcohol tolerance that bad?" Mo Jingshan glanced at her. It went without saying. Whether her alcohol tolerance was bad or not, based on her current state, was there a need for him to say it? Jin Wan saw his gaze and opened her mouth to bite down on the side of his neck. She did not bite too hard, and the tip of her tongue inadvertently licked his neck. After several seconds she was about to pull back when the man abruptly pulled out one hand from the steering wheel, holding her waist and pressing her against him. His low and hoarse voice bit by her ear. "You're getting more and more daring. You dare to directly seduce me in the car, N?" Looking at the man's deep gaze, Jinwan narrowed her eyes and smiled at him. She moved closer to his ear to whisper, "Why wouldn't I dare?" Mo Jingshan's brows moved. The car slowed down and drove slowly by the roadside. He kissed her lips and stared at her with his dark eyes. He was about to kiss her again. However, Jinwan suddenly said, "What a pity, great aunt is coming again." The man who was about to kiss her abruptly paused. He stared at her for a long time, and just as Jinwan was smiling at him in delight, he abruptly kissed her harshly on the lips. At the same time he stopped the car. He kissed this little woman who dared to show off in front of him just because she was on her period until she begged for mercy. Only then did he let her go. In the end, he kissed her lips that were much rosier than usual, sometimes deep and sometimes heavy. He said in a low voice, "Last time at Wanli Starry Sky Hotel, I still haven't satisfied your request. Isn't this a good opportunity?" With the help of the alcohol, Jinwan stared at the man who looked like he couldn't wait to press her into the car. She suddenly raised her hand and pressed it hard against his face. She squeezed hard until his handsome face changed shape. Then she chuckled, puckered her lips and kissed him on the lips. The man's gaze darkened. Unknowingly, she continued to hold his face to say, "Then you have to agree to a request of mine." She still knew how to raise conditions when she was so drunk? Mo Jingshan glanced at her. "And?" She stared at Mo Jingshan's dark, sea-like eyes with a hint of drunkenness. "Previously, in order for me to inherit the G Corporation, my father had already enrolled me in a business management class in T-City. However, I never went. It's been at least 2 to 3 years. Mo Jingshan understood the meaning behind her words. His gaze darkened. "You want to go now?" Jinwan nodded. "The school is T University. The professor in T University's business department is very famous. Right now, many of the managers of well-known companies in the country are his students. That's why I'm looking forward to it." The little woman's attitude was originally very soft when she was discussing with him. Furthermore, she was slightly drunk and her voice was even softer and sweeter. Mo Jingshan pinched her flushed face. "I'll consider this matter. We'll talk about it when you're sober tomorrow." Jinwan chuckled and suddenly reached out to hug his neck. "All right." Mo Jingshan glanced at the streetlights outside the car. He pulled her arm away and had her sit properly. He then went to drive the car. Before they reached the U Garden, Jinwan had already fallen asleep. Mo Jingshan glanced at the little woman who had just raised a condition with him, but now wanted to sleep first. He laughed angrily. He really could not let her touch even a little alcohol. The car stopped at the U Garden's parking lot. Mo Jingshan alighted first. He walked around the car to open the door and carry the little woman who was sleeping so soundly out. The lighting in the parking lot was not too bright. When it landed on the man's body, it was half bright and half dark. It gave off a hazy feeling. Jinwan opened her eyes in a daze and looked at him. She reached out and hugged his neck, burying her face in his neck. Chapter 169. What Nanheng said today was right. Sometimes you can't blame others for being too cold-blooded. You can only blame yourself for not being strong enough, Jinwan said softly in his embrace. Jinwan was slightly drunk tonight. Mo Jingshan watched her for a long time but did not say anything. He carried her back to the villa. After entering, she continued to hug his neck, watching his handsome face. "I need to work harder. Work harder to catch up to your footsteps. Work harder to support my new life." The words "new life" caused the man's footsteps to pause for a moment. However, it was only for a moment. He carried her back to the room, leaning over to place her on the bed. Watching the drunken little woman, he supported himself against her body, watching her as he calmly said, "In the future, you're not allowed to touch alcohol." It seemed like in the future, even if it was a cake, he had to taste it for her first. Previously he promised her about the cake. He took it back. "Mo Jingshan. I want to become strong. I want to become very strong. I want to be strong enough that I don't need other people's pity or help. I want to be able to control my own life. I want to be strong enough that I don't fear any risks of life and death. I also want..." The man abruptly lowered his head to kiss her, kissing back the grand wishes on her lips. Jinwan was already drunk. After being kissed for a while, she really could not speak and decided not to speak. She closed her eyes and hugged his neck. Jinwan quickly fell asleep. Mo Jingshan lowered his head to watch her. Jinwan woke up in the middle of the night to find that Mo Jingshan was not by her side. She sat up and rubbed her slightly messy hair. She then kicked the bed, pushed open the study door and the balcony window, but did not see any trace of Mo Jingshan. She stood on the balcony and looked down. On the U Gardens parking lot, the black ghost was not parked where it was supposed to be. She did not know when it had been driven away. She did not intend to be so drunk today, but the fruit wine in the cake mixed with the alcohol in the juice caused her head to ache even after she fell asleep. Even after standing on the balcony in the cold wind for several minutes, she was still unable to wake up. Her head was still aching. She rubbed her forehead and turned to return to the room. She closed the windows and threw herself onto the bed. She grabbed her phone by the bedside wanting to call Mo Jingshan. However, all she heard was a mechanical female voice. "I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is currently busy." Jinwan tossed her phone aside. Her head really hurt. She grabbed the pillow and pressed it against her head, forcing herself to continue sleeping. The black ghost sped along the road. Mo Jingshan called Nanheng. The call was quickly connected. Nanheng was a little drunk and his tone was lazy. "I thought after you sent Jinwan back, you and your woman would have sex at home and wouldn't have time to come out." Mo Jingshan, at this time he did not plan to leave Jinwan alone at home. The little woman was drunk and would occasionally talk in her sleep. She was also on her period. After helping her bathe and change into her pajamas, he was still wide awake. If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have come out with a single call from Nanheng. "Didn't you just drink tonight? Why did you go to Qin Siding's place to drink again?" Mo Jingshan asked coldly. In Qin Siding's villa, Nanheng sat on the sofa, narrowing his eyes to look at the bright lights in the villa area outside the window. He then glanced at Qin Siding, who was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows with a dark and cold expression. He chuckled and said, "This old man was afraid that he would take things too hard and came to take a look. In the end, he's been standing in front of the window like a block of wood for half an hour. I suspect that he has already entered a meditative state and won't listen to anything." Mo Jingshan calmly said, "Indeed, we shouldn't interfere in his matters." Because Nanheng sat here and drank a few more glasses, he was slightly drunk. His slender fingers rubbed his brows, calmly saying, "I owe Shirnianj a favor in America. Otherwise, do you think I'd be willing to interfere in her and old Qin's trivial matters?" Nanheng was not someone who liked to meddle in other people's business. If Shirnianj had not chosen his birthday to bring a cake over, and if Nanheng had not been looking for trouble with Qin Siding these past few days, he would not have had the leisure to interfere. He was not interested in helping anyone. It was just that Qin Siding had been living too lonely these years. Seeing that he was living like a monk in meditation, he was not pleasing to the eye. He wanted to find some other stimulation for his peaceful life. Mo Jingshan calmly asked while driving, "Are you still at his place?" "Nanheng. Recently he added quite a lot of good wine here. I drank a little and only finished it now. I'm too lazy to move around, so I'll stay here today. Anyway, we're two grown men. I won't let that pitiful Ling Xianer return and take advantage of old Qin's situation to do something." "What's the matter, you're really coming?" The wine that Qin Siding had recently added was naturally all from Mo Jingshan's hands. Mo Jingshan, wait. 15 minutes later. Nanheng held a cigarette in his mouth, turning back to look at the man who had appeared in the villa. Mo Jingshan was dressed in black, appearing to be dyed in the night. He walked in through the door and glanced at Qin Siding, who was still standing by the window. Qin Siding put one hand in his trouser pocket and didn't intend to pay attention to the two of them. Even though Mo Jingshan suddenly came at such a late hour, he just coldly glanced at the door, withdrew his cold eyes and didn't speak. How long has he been standing there? Mo Jingshan walked in. Nanheng turned to watch the tall man approach. His well-defined fingers brushed away the cigarette ash, raising his brows. "He's probably been standing there since he came back. He was already like this when I came." Speaking of which, Nanheng smiled mockingly at Mo Jingshan. "You're actually able to come so late. Could it be that Jinwan was so drunk that she couldn't recognize you and directly kicked you off the bed?" Mo Jingshan coldly glanced at him. "You're very experienced? Often kicked by women?" Nanheng raised his brows, smiling as he held the cigarette in his mouth. He picked up the wine on the coffee table and poured a cup for him. Mo Jingshan did not receive the wine cup. His cold gaze shifted in Qin Siding's direction. From start to finish, Qin Siding had been coldly staring out the window. "You've chased away the impoverished young lady you brought back so quickly?" Mo Jingshan looked at his gloomy appearance and asked coolly. Nan Heng sat on the sofa, smoking as he narrowed his eyes and smiled. He also glanced at Qin Siding. "You clearly have no interest in Ling Shen'er at all, yet you insist on buying her. Keeping such a sticky candy by your side as the price, it's all because you don't want Shirniange to live too comfortably. DSK, what's the point? Injuring 1,000, injuring oneself 800, oh no, it should be injuring 1,000, injuring oneself 10,000. Chapter 170. Mo Jingshan walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, lifted his eyelids and looked out. Qin Siding stood there and looked in the direction of the villa not far away. The villa was dark and without light. No one had returned, and the black carved door in front of the door had been quiet for a night. There was only a floor lamp on this side of the floor-to-ceiling window. Under the dim light, no one spoke and there was a moment of silence. The whole world seemed to be quiet, except for a white cat jumping out of the high wall of the opposite villa, meowing softly in the darkness from time to time. Mo Jingshan put one hand in his trouser pocket, his calm, low and cold voice particularly clear under the dim light. "Back then you disregarded your own safety to love her and then hated her to death. Now that she has returned you keep avoiding her. Tonight you clearly want to continue acting like a stranger. What are you still standing here looking at? If she doesn't come back for a night, are you going to stand here and wait all night?" Qin Siding, who had been meditating for a long time, finally moved, but he only turned to glance at him. "Who the F***ck said I'm standing here to look at her?" As though the oppressive peace of the night was finally broken, Qin Siding's brows were full of coldness. "Do you think I'm the type to stand here and wait until dawn for such a woman?" Mo Jingshan coldly said, "Her villa has been empty here for a few years and you've moved here for a few years. You've been looking at an empty villa for so long, and now that the person who left has finally come back, she probably still doesn't know that you live across from her. Don't you know how long you've been standing here every day and night?" Qin Siding. He abruptly turned to the sofa, picked up the cigarette that Nan Heng had thrown on the coffee table and lit it. After taking a few puffs to calm down, he coldly said, "Moving here was also a decision I made several years ago when I was ignorant and still immersed in the entanglement of love and hate. Now, I don't have any feelings for her. I'm just used to living here and can't be bothered to change places." Nan Heng sneered as he puffed out the smoke. "Is it because you're young and ignorant, or is it because you've lived for more than 20 years and only had feelings for such a woman? Even now, those women chasing after you all think you're not interested in women. In the end, who knew that your pure young man's heart had long been crushed by a woman and hasn't been pieced back together until now?" Qin Siding was expressionless. "The two of you came to my place in the middle of the night just to ridicule me for my stupid past?" Nan Heng smiled. "I do have that intention, but I don't know why he came so late at night. I said he was kicked out of bed by Jin Wan, but he refused to admit it." Nan Heng watched Mo Jingshan as he spoke. Mo Jingshan calmly said, "I couldn't sleep, so I came to see how unhappy old Qin is. If he tells me, perhaps I'll be happy." Qin Siding. "Can't sleep?" Qin Siding sneered. After taking a few puffs, he put out the cigarette. "You too can't sleep, so you came here to watch me?" Nan Heng was laughing with a cigarette in his mouth. Mo Jingshan only coldly raised his brows. Indeed, he could not sleep. She was not kicked out of bed, nor did they quarrel. It was his woman who wanted to go to T-City to study. She wanted to change her identity from Mrs. Mo to a business student at T University. Although she would only be studying for a few short months, it could be considered a temporary separation from him. This was clearly a decision she had made after the banquet that day. The little woman clearly dared to make this decision under the pretext of being drunk. Could he reject? He could, but he clearly could not. He could clearly feel that after Jin Wan's temperament changed several months ago, under the calm and mature surface, there was an indescribable vulnerability and sensitivity. She was extremely afraid of being separated by life and death. She was even more afraid of not being able to control her own life. She had more stubbornness in her bones, more things that she wanted to hold on to, but they were hidden very deeply. When Mo Jingshan returned, it was already close to dawn. The sky was still dark, but there were hints of white. He originally thought that Jin Wan was still asleep, but the little woman was tossing and turning on the bed. It was clear that she did not sleep well. It was only when he laid down by her side that she furrowed her brows and burrowed into his embrace, gradually calming down. Mo Jingshan stroked her hair. "Headache." Jin Wan closed her eyes and nodded in his embrace. She was half asleep and dazed. She did not speak. Mo Jingshan's hand that had landed on her hair turned to gently massage her forehead. She did not move, allowing him to soothe the pain in her head. The little woman wore soft pajamas, her long hair scattered on the pillow on the bed. Her body was fragrant, and she leaned softly in his embrace. Her eyes were closed the entire time. She did not ask where he had gone and only instinctively snuggled into his embrace, unwilling to move away even a single inch. Emon Studio. The computer screen was filled with all sorts of messages that Xia Tian had sent her on MSN. Right now, Xia Tian could already walk normally with the help of a walking stick. She just needed to go through 3 months of rehabilitation. If she wanted to come to her studio to help, it would not be convenient for her to stay too far away. However, when Xia Tian studied with her in America, she studied at the University of Finance and Economics. She also specialized in financial analysis. Right now, the position of the finance manager in the studio was vacant. It just so happened that Xia Tian could come over to help her. This would save Jinwan a lot of effort. The two of them were chatting in full swing when the intercom on the office desk suddenly rang. Jinwan casually picked it up. Hello. COG hello. There's a package for you here. The call came from the mail room on the first floor of Jinlin building. Jinwan glanced at the caller ID and said, "All right, I'll be down in a moment." After hanging up, Jinwan typed a few words on the keyboard. Are you afraid that you'll have too many things after leaving the hospital, so you packed up your things and sent them to the studio? Xia Tian replied, No, I don't have many things. When I go, I'll just casually bring a suitcase to my place. Jinwan raised her brows slightly. That was strange. Why would there suddenly be a package for her? In this year, the domestic e-commerce industry had just started. She didn't have the habit of buying things online, and she rarely sent things to others. Xiao Ba or her secretary were in charge of the letters or phone faxes she received in her studio. Xiao Ba didn't know what to do with Xiao Ba. Why would there be a package directly sent to her? Jinwan directly went downstairs to the mail room on the first floor. The person inside handed her a square box that was not very large. Jinwan saw that the box was wrapped tightly and could not tell what exactly was inside. Furthermore, there was only the address of the recipient and her name. There was no address or sender written on it. Who sent it? Jinwan kept an eye out and asked. I'm not sure. Earlier, when I was tidying up the pile of boxes by the door, I discovered it. Chapter 171. Jinwan took the package and entered the elevator. The moment she returned to the office, Feng Ling glanced at the box in her hands. What is it? I just received the package. I don't know what's inside, Jinwan said as she prepared to enter. However, Feng Ling's expression turned solemn. She immediately became wary and turned to enter the office with her. As they walked, she said, I'll open it for you. Stand further away. Jinwan faltered. She was about to say that it was fine and that it was just a package. However, she saw that Feng Ling had already carried the box to the office table. Knowing how responsible and cautious Feng Ling was usually, she smiled and teased, All right, then go ahead and open it. Be careful. Don't let it be something like a bomb. As she spoke, Feng Ling had already opened the waterproof bag and opened the box. She lowered her eyes to see what was inside and paused. She then turned back to look at Jinwan. What is it? Jinwan walked over and lowered her head to see that there was actually a medium-sized doll in the box. The doll was dressed in a white wedding dress and was very beautiful and adorable. Why is it a doll? Who would send me something like this? See. Jinwan reached out to pick up the doll. However, the moment her hand touched the doll, a sharp pain spread from her palm. She softly cried out in pain as blood flowed down her palm and fingers, dripping onto the doll's wedding dress. Be careful. Feng Ling quickly pulled Jinwan's hand away and kicked the package onto the ground. Jinwan turned back and stared in shock at the doll that had instantly shattered into pieces. She ignored the pain in her palm and stared at the doll that appeared to be simply pieced together in the box. However, when it was placed in the box, it had already been dismembered. The floor was also littered with blades. The doll's wedding dress was dyed red by Jinwan's blood. The dismembered head and limbs, as well as the blood-stained wedding dress, were a ghastly sight. Are you all right? Feng Ling coldly stared at the doll that had turned from adorable to frightening. She immediately grabbed Jinwan's hand and saw that her fingers and palm had been slashed to varying degrees by the blades. I'm fine. Jinwan shook her head. The pain in her palm was not too serious, but the blade had cut deep and caused more blood to flow. She then turned to look at the doll on the ground. Her eyebrows moved slightly as she fell into deep thought. Whose prank was this? Or did someone else have other intentions? After confirming that Jinwan was standing at a safe distance, she walked over, bent down, and untied the blood-stained wedding dress on the doll. Only then did she see the blades stabbed into the doll's body. There were also many blades hidden in the wedding dress. They were very small and very sharp. Jinwan stared at the blades and then at her hands thoughtfully. After checking, Feng Ling stood up and said, "The cuts on your hands are very deep. Go to the hospital to stop the bleeding and bandage them first." Jinwan nodded and turned to glance at the express delivery box. Feng Ling seemed to understand her and went over to tear off the receipt. As they walked out of the office, Xiaoba happened to pass by. Seeing Jinwan's hand, she immediately cried out, "Oh my God, Boss Nguyen, what's wrong with your hand? Why is there so much blood?" Jinwan indicated for Feng Ling to pass the receipt to Xiaoba. "Go to this delivery company and ask them to find out where this package came from. If they don't do it, call the police to complain." Xiaoba received it in a daze and then nodded. "All right, but Boss Nguyen, your hand, it's fine. It's just some blood. Don't make a fuss." Jinwan did not say more and headed out. "Let's go to Dr. Chin's hospital. It's not far from here," Feng Ling said as she pushed open the door. Jinwan was still thinking about why the doll was wearing a wedding dress and did not say more. When they got into the car, Jinwan saw Feng Ling's serious expression. After thinking for a moment, she said, "It's my fault for being careless. Besides, these are all superficial wounds. Don't tell Jing Shen in case he worries." Feng Ling was about to drive when she turned back to look at her. "It's my fault. I shouldn't have opened the box and seen a doll. Mr. Amo will find out about this sooner or later. There's no way to hide it. Let's go to the hospital first. We'll talk after Xiaoba finds the results." Jinwan lowered her eyes to look at her hand. Feng Ling did not say more and turned to drive. Hospital. Qin Sighting helped Jinwan apply medicine on her palm while saying mockingly, "Do you really think I'm an all-purpose doctor? I'm in the internal medicine department. Even an external wound has to be treated by me. How did you end up like this in the studio? How exactly did you injure yourself?" Feng Ling stood by Jinwan's side and did not speak. Earlier, when Jinwan saw Qin Sighting, she finally diverted some attention and paid special attention to his expression. He still had that sly smile on his face as though nothing had happened in Zijing Cheng Club. "I'd be gentler." Jinwan felt a piercing pain in her palm. She abruptly cried out softly, "Are you going to directly press the alcohol cotton into my wound? Can't you see that the two wounds on my palm are very deep? Can't you be gentler?" Qin Sighting sneered. "Endure it." "Jinwan." She abruptly raised her head to look at Feng Ling. Earlier, she had said that she would directly find a doctor from the trauma department to disinfect and bandage her wound. However, Feng Ling insisted on bringing her to Dr. Qin. It was as though aside from Dr. Qin, no one else was reliable. "You don't need to look at Feng Ling. She was heavily injured during a mission in America and almost lost her little life. It was me who brought her back from the gates of hell. She is very stubborn. In this world, aside from me, no one else can be called a doctor in her eyes." Qin Sighting spoke indifferently and then used the alcohol cotton to wipe Jinwan's fingers. When Jinwan once again clenched her teeth in pain, he coldly asked, "Does it hurt that much? When my hand was injured, I didn't feel much pain. Don't put salt in the alcohol, it hurts like hell." Jinwan said as she retracted her hand. "Is it done? It's more or less fine. There's no need to bandage it. The injury on your palm is more serious. It needs to be bandaged. Your fingers are fine. You just need to apply some medicine to disinfect it." Qin Sighting's voice was mild. "For the next few days, be careful not to touch water in case it gets infected." Jinwan nodded. Qin Sighting placed the rest of the alcohol cotton on the shelf by the side. He then turned to look at her. "Your hand is injured to this extent. Have you told your man? I'll tell him when I return tonight." Chapter 172. After Feng Ling left, Jinwan turned to Qin Sighting. "Aren't we not on the same side? Why did you suddenly send her away? Do you wish for more people to hear about your Ji family's matters?" Qin Sighting glanced at her indifferently. He casually took out a medicine analysis report that was thicker than the previous one and handed it to her. Jinwan was about to reach out to receive it when Qin Sighting suddenly paused. He placed the analysis report by her side. "Forget it. It's better if you don't move your hand." Jinwan lowered her head to look at the report before raising her eyes to look at him. "What's the result?" "It's about the same as your initial guess. This so-called healthcare medicine brought back from abroad has not been found to contain any toxic ingredients. It can be seen that the other party has been very careful. However, if these medicines are taken together, it will become a chronic poison that can cause kidney failure. Qin Siding's tone was cold. Jin Wan was silent for a moment. She had already expected this. Now that she heard the result, she was not surprised. My father shouldn't have taken this medicine for too long. I've seen the medicine in his drawer. He only takes it occasionally when he thinks of it. Could it have already affected his body? That depends on your father's usual dosage. This is a drug formula that is very slow and hard to detect. If he doesn't take it for a long time, it will at most cause his body's resistance to weaken, and he will easily fall sick. As long as he stops taking the medicine, he will be fine after a while of rest and detoxification. However, if he takes it for too long, the medicine will be like a frog being boiled in warm water. It will unknowingly seep into his blood and into his bones, causing him to be unable to reverse the situation. Jin Wan stared at him, her expression cold and solemn. After a long while, she slowly and softly said, "Thank you. I've troubled you, Dr. Qin." Qin Siding smiled and glanced at the analysis report by her hand. "It's a good thing that you've already discovered this matter. It's not hard to see that the other party is an extremely meticulous person. If you want to expose this matter, you still have to put in some effort. Otherwise, it's easy to fall into the other party's trap and dig your own grave." Jin Wan nodded and did not speak. Qin Siding didn't bother with her anymore and let her sit by the side to wait for Feng Ling to return with the medicine. About 2 minutes later, Qin Siding sat at the desk in the consultation room and drank some water. He suddenly asked, "Is your stepmother's ex-husband the sickly man from the Sheng family who died early?" Jin Wan had investigated Shinharu's matter, but she did not expect Qin Siding to know about it as well. "What do you want to ask?" Qin Siding glanced back at her. "Sheng Yihan is her son. Even if they severed their relationship because of the Ji family many years ago, your stepmother used to rely on the Sheng family. It's still unknown whether she and her son have really severed their relationship completely." "Sheng Yihan is her son," Sheng Yihan said with a smile. Jin Wan looked at him. "Do you mean that the medicine you gave my father might have something to do with Sheng Yihan?" Qin Siding smiled mildly. "It's not impossible, but Sheng Yihan is cunning and good at hiding. This person seems too calm and unfathomable. Your stepmother is a woman in her 50s after all. A woman like her who rarely shows her face outside is very suitable to live a stable life in the Ji family. If something happens to your father, the Ji family's power in her hands won't be of much use. Unless there's someone behind her." It went without saying that although Shinharu was smart, she was not smart to the point where she could handle things so cautiously. Qin Siding did not say more. His words clearly did not go overboard. When Feng Ling returned, Qin Siding coincidentally had a specialist consultation to attend. After explaining a few words about Jin Wan's hand injury, he left. Only the two of them were left in the consultation room. Jin Wan was preparing to leave the hospital when her phone suddenly rang. "Hello, Boss Wan, I've checked. The package was sent from Los Angeles in America. I can only find the address of the package, but there's no contact person. There's no other information. There's no information about the sender at all. And then there's nothing at all. I can't find anything at all. The delivery company said that many people don't write an address when sending things, only leaving their name and phone number. However, this package seems to have a problem. There's actually no name or phone number. They also find it strange. America? Why did she feel that she was closely related to many things in America recently? Yet she did not know what was going on. Regardless of whether it was her previous life or this life, Jin Wan was certain that she did not suffer from amnesia. She remembered everything that had happened since she was young. She had only gone to school in Los Angeles a few years ago. Was there anything she didn't know? To send a doll in a wedding gown, and a dismembered doll at that, the motive was clear. However, since it was sent from America, it should have nothing to do with Ji Menggran. Although Shuyan had returned to America in the past few days, with Shuyan's personality, even if the proud and arrogant young lady of the Yin family was smart and had some tricks up her sleeves, she would not have done such a thing. If Shuyan was such a vicious and violent person, she would have displayed it in the country and would not have returned to America so easily. This kind of method did not seem like something Mo Jingshan's father would do. This method was clearly done by a woman. Who exactly was it? At night, Feng Ling sent Jin Wan back to the Yu Garden. Unexpectedly, Mo Jingshan returned at almost the same time as her. She had just alighted from the car when his car stopped outside the Yu Garden. When Jin Wan alighted from the car, she subconsciously placed her hands behind her back. She turned to look at the black ghost. Without waiting for Mo Jingshan to alight, she headed straight for the villa. Mo Jingshan was talking on the phone in the car. When he saw Jin Wan's suspicious behavior, he hung up the phone and alighted. He closed the door and walked over. In the end, Jin Wan was in too much of a rush. When she reached the villa, her hand was wrapped in gauze and could not open the door. When she felt Mo Jingshan approaching, her scalp immediately turned numb. Did you do something shameful? You don't even dare to raise your head? Mo Jingshan's voice rang from above Jin Wan's head. Jin Wan quickly took a step back, moving away from the man to the side. It's nothing. I'm just a little tired today. Why did you get off work so early? Don't you have a business dinner tonight? As Jin Wan spoke, she quietly leaned against the door. By the time her last word landed, Auntie Chen had already heard the commotion and opened the door from inside. Chapter 173. Jin Wan was rooted to the spot. The sound of the handmade Italian shoes on the ground was steady and powerful, but in Jin Wan's ears, it carried an ominous signal. She had just adjusted her expression and was about to reveal a smile as though nothing had happened when she felt a slightly cold finger on her shoulder. Hand stretch out, Mo Jingshan calmly said. Jin Wan stared at him without moving. The man's expression gradually turned cold. After staring at her for a long time, he suddenly chuckled coldly. How long do you think you can hide it? Jin Wan sighed heavily in her heart. She really did not want to tell him that she had accidentally caused trouble because of her carelessness today. It was really too embarrassing. She subconsciously took a step back, wanting to use Auntie Chen's presence to enter first. Come here. Mo Jingshan's voice was heavy. Jin Wan was helpless and could only walk over with her head lowered. Mo Jingshan lowered his eyes to watch her. She paused for a moment and then saw that Feng Ling was still outside the Yu garden. She guessed that there was no way to continue hiding this matter and could only stretch out the two hands behind her back. Mo Jingshan lowered his eyes to look at her bandaged palms and slightly swollen fingers. He directly grabbed her wrist and strode into the villa. Auntie Chen saw his cold expression and did not dare to approach to speak. Just like that, Jin Wan was brought up the stairs and into the room. It's just a superficial wound. I didn't tell Feng Ling to tell you because I didn't want you to worry. Besides, I've already gone to the hospital to deal with it. It'll be fine as long as it doesn't touch water for a few days. Don't get angry. Jin Wan knew that Mo Jingshan was clearly in the calm before the storm. She could only not give up on any opportunity to ease his mood and kept explaining. Mo Jingshan did not respond. He pushed open the bedroom door and brought her in. Go in. I'm in a bad mood right now. Don't make me repeat myself. Jin Wan's thousands of words were stuck on the tip of her tongue. She could only enter the bedroom. The moment the door was closed, she turned back to see that Mo Jingshan's expression was indeed very unkind. Explain? He coldly spat out these two words. Let me say this first. Don't blame Feng Ling. She's very dutiful. It's all my fault. I told her not to tell you, Jin Wan said helplessly. Mo Jingshan took off his coat and threw it to the side. His movements were not gentle as he tugged at his collar button, speaking to Jin Wan in a heavy voice. Don't be in a hurry to cover up for others. Since you asked her to hide it from me, you should tell me the truth. How did your hand get hurt so badly after less than 10 hours in the studio? Jin Wan had no choice but to truthfully tell him everything that happened today. When she saw the man's gaze turn sharper when he heard about the dismembered doll in the wedding dress, she quickly recounted how she was taken to the hospital by Feng Ling and went to Qin Siding's place to treat her wounds. Her purpose was to let him know that Feng Ling was really responsible for her and that he shouldn't vent his anger on Feng Ling because of such a small matter. The source of the package, have you checked? Mo Jingshan's tone softened. However, rather than saying it softened, it was more accurate to say that there was an unexplainable danger hidden within. Feng Ling is so obedient to you right now. She even dared to hide such a thing from me. It seems like it's time to find a new person by your side. Don't. This matter really can't be blamed on her. She knew that no matter what, I would come back at night. You would find out about this sooner or later. I only asked her to hide it for a few hours. After all, you were in the company during the day. I didn't want you to be distracted, Jin Wan explained. Seeing that Jin Wan was busy protecting Feng Ling and considering whether he would be distracted at the company, yet she did not care much about her own safety, Mo Jingshan seemed to smile. However, Jin Wan could not determine if he was smiling or sneering. She could only hear the slightest hint of a smile in his tone. However, it made her worry endlessly if Feng Ling would be punished because of this matter. Worry about yourself first. Mo Jingshan looked at her, his tone cold. Jin Wan paused and could only say, That was an international package. We only managed to find out that it was sent from America. All of the sender's information was hidden. Where's the serial number? It's in my phone's photo album. I took a photo. Mo Jingshan took her cell phone, opened it, took a look and sent the photo with the odd number to his cell phone. Go sit down first. Mo Jingshan glanced at her again. Seeing his expression, Jinwan felt that it was best not to offend him. She obediently sat down by the bed. Seeing that she was obedient, Mo Jingshan's expression finally softened. He closed the door and left. Half an hour later, Shinmu returned Mo Jingshan's call. Mo, I've checked. This international package's serial number has indeed been hidden. The sender must have paid a large sum of money to the Los Angeles delivery company. Usually, when things are sent from America to the country, the American customs aren't particularly strict. Coupled with the fact that there's a human factor, it was successfully sent to the country. Since it's been hidden, it means that there's still a way to find out, Mo Jingshan said coldly. Yes, I've contacted the people in Los Angeles. After a special investigation, they only managed to find the sender's surname. What's the surname? Hearing this surname, Mo Jingshan's calm gaze abruptly turned cold under the light. Her hand was injured, but there were some benefits. For example, Qin Sighting had instructed her not to bend or move her hand for the next 2 days, and not to touch water for the next 5 days. Thus, when Jinwan was having dinner, Auntie Chen would send the prepared food up. She would sit by the table and Mo Jingshan would personally feed her. Open your mouth. Open your mouth. Ah. Seeing how badly injured her hand was, she kept winking and smiling as she ate, as though she was very proud of being personally fed by him. Mo Jingshan tossed the chopsticks onto the table and picked up the spoon to feed her a mouthful of soup. Jinwan pursed her lips and gulped it down. She then looked at Mo Jingshan's serious appearance as he fed her. It was as though he was afraid of scalding her. When she drank the soup, he kept staring at her mouth. He had already blown on it and it was not scalding at all, but he was still overly careful. Jinwan smiled, almost laughing out loud. She sat by the table and placed her hands on her lap, like an obedient primary school student receiving Boss Mo's feeding. You're still smiling? You didn't place a bomb in the package and cripple your hand, did you? Mo Jingshan stuffed another mouthful of soup into her mouth. I just feel very happy being fed by you. With a husband to dote on me, who wouldn't be happy? Jinwan was in a good mood. Chapter 174. He stuffed a mouthful of egg into Jinwan's mouth. She chewed and mumbled, such an experience is hard to come by. How do you feel? Not much. I feel like I have a daughter. Mo Jingshan picked up another small piece of vegetable and fed it to her without waiting for her to speak. If we have a daughter in the future, you'll most likely spoil her to the heavens. Mo Jingshan's handsome brows rose slightly. Why don't we have one now? Jinwan took a sip of the soup he fed her and swallowed before saying, I'll consider it after I return from T-City. Speaking of T-City, Mo Jingshan calmly said, the T-University professor that your father introduced is indeed someone with a long history in the country. He has taught many business managers, but there are many students who are attracted by his fame. There are already 40 to 50 students in his class. Are you sure you can adapt to this kind of learning environment? Jinwan did not know when he had investigated that professor. She raised her eyes. You even investigated a professor. How worried are you about me? T-City isn't close to High City. If I don't even understand the situation there, how can I let you go with ease? Mo Jingshan saw that she had eaten her fill and casually placed the cutlery down. He picked up a napkin and wiped the corner of her mouth. Then does this mean you're agreeing? Do I have to wait a few days for that professor to start a new class at T-University? Jinwan's expression was filled with anticipation. Mo Jingshan glanced at her. I can invite all the outstanding lecturers to High City to give you a month of tutoring. If 1 month isn't enough, then 2. It's the same even if you study at home. Jinwan knew that Mo Jingshan would not easily agree to let her go to T-City. No matter how outstanding the lecturers are, it won't feel good if they only teach me. Based on my age, if I hadn't studied in America in my early years, I should have just started university. T-University is one of the top business universities in the country. It's better to study in such a place. That professor of yours will be teaching for at least 3 months. Are you sure you won't return to High City for 3 months? Mo Jingshan's tone was mild. It's only been 3 months. Just treat it as sending me to T-City to further my studies. Don't your company often have people who need to study abroad to supplement their knowledge? 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. What's more, wasn't long-distance relationships popular in recent years? The two of us haven't experienced the joys and sorrows of a long-distance relationship before we got married. This time we can experience it. Jinwan smiled with interest. Mo Jingshan sneered coldly. Who's in a long-distance relationship with you? Sweet, sour, bitter and spicy? You think too much. Jinwan. It's not romantic at all. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Mo Jingshan was expressionless. In my eyes, we're still newlyweds. There's no need to use a small separation to make us feel better. Jinwan choked. She wanted to argue back, but Mo Jingshan did not plan to continue this topic. He signaled for her to stand up with his eyes. Get up first. You've just eaten and it's not easy to digest. Walk around the room for a while. I'll go prepare water for you to bathe. After saying that, the man turned around and entered the bathroom. Jinwan, she didn't know when it started, but Mo Jingshan was becoming more and more skilled at taking care of her. After the argument at night, no, it couldn't be considered an argument. At the very least, Mo Jingshan's attitude was ambiguous. He wasn't sure if he would let her go or not. Furthermore, he was always cold towards this matter. Jinwan's hands were bandaged. When she sat in the bathtub, her clothes had already been removed. Mo Jingshan half supported and half carried her into the water. She had been too busy in the studio during the day, and in the afternoon she had been frightened by the delivery. She had been too focused the entire day, and the moment she sat in the warm water, she couldn't control her eyelids and felt drowsy. Afterward, she didn't know why she fell asleep in the bathtub. She leaned against the side of the bathtub, but the water that splashed against her body made her unable to sleep well. She opened her eyes occasionally and saw the man's figure. The sense of security she felt when she was by Mo Jingshan's side caused her to close her eyes and not open them again. Mo Jingshan looked at her face that was flushed red from the hot water. It was white and rosy, clean and charming. His heart was indescribably soft and his eyes softened. His lips curved slightly. Don't sleep. It's easy to catch a cold if you sleep in the water. Mo Jingshan pinched her cheeks. He did not plan on letting her fall asleep in the bathtub. Jinwan furrowed her brows and pushed his hand away. She leaned her head against the outside of the bathtub, leaning against his shoulder. Mo Jingshan did not force her. He helped her wash her body, wrapped her in a towel, and carried her out of the bathtub. His long legs moved and he walked out of the bathroom. Looking at the tired face of the woman in his arms, his brows furrowed slightly. You're so tired. Don't go to the studio tomorrow. Coincidentally, your hand also needs to rest at home for a few days. Be good and stay at home. Jinwan rubbed against his chest, saying vaguely, No. The studio is currently lacking manpower. If I don't go, everyone will be even busier. You know the studio is lacking manpower, yet you still want to leave for T-City? That's different. If I really leave, Xia Tian will come and help me. Jinwan rubbed her head against his chest again, saying softly and lazily, I really want to go. I didn't say that you can't go. Let your hand recover first. Mo Jingshan carried her to the bedside. Jinwan did not open her eyes. Just like that, she snuggled in his embrace. Her voice was half asleep and half awake. I want to work hard. I want to work harder than before. Mo Jingshan's gaze deepened. He watched the little woman in his arms and placed her on the bed. As soon as she touched the bed, Jinwan consciously found a comfortable position on the bed. She then raised her forearm to her nose and sniffed it. She said fawningly, Thank you, hubby, for bathing me. It makes me smell so good. In order to get him to agree, this little woman really thought of ways to coax him. Mo Jingshan snorted, throwing the blanket over her. Don't move your hand around. Put it down properly. Hurry and sleep. Jinwan was really sleepy. She wrapped her arms around the blanket and fell asleep comfortably. The next day, when Jinwan woke up, she realized that she had woken up late. Her originally packed schedule for the studio was now gone. After making a call, she found out that Mo Jingshan had transferred someone from his company over to help her organize the various affairs in the studio. After confirming that all the work she had arranged was not delayed, Jinwan finally relaxed and laid back on the bed. This man, Mo Jingshan, usually did not say much, but he always did everything well. Everything regarding her was handled exceptionally well. Chapter 175. Since she was told to rest, she would rest. Jinwan directly went to the hospital to fetch Xia Tian, who was about to be discharged. In the end, because she could not hold anything with her hands, Xia Tian rolled her eyes at her. What's the use of keeping you? Jinwan had already found a new place for Xia Tian to stay in. After all, Xia Tian was purely here to help and did not want any benefits. Although this Xia family's young lady had left home, she did not lack money. The only thing Jin Wan could do was to help her arrange everything so that she would not have to run around too much during her recovery. On the way to Xia Tian's new place, Xia Tian could not stop scolding her. Look at you. How can you injure your hand so badly just to receive a package? Doesn't your Mo Jingshan's heart ache? Even if my heart aches, what can I do? I can only blame myself for being too careless. Jin Wan remembered that Qin Siding had said yesterday that the bandage would only last for a day. After that, she just had to apply medicine on her hand on time every day. Thus, as she slowly removed the bandage with some difficulty, she briefly explained to Xia Tian about the package she received yesterday. Xia Tian listened for a while. Initially, because there were outsiders in the taxi, she did not speak. After alighting from the car, Xia Tian asked the person helping her with her luggage to enter first. She looked at Jin Wan from outside and asked, "This package is clearly a love rival trying to scare you. Who is so bold as to send this kind of thing to your studio? Isn't this blatant provocation?" As she spoke, Xia Tian turned around to look at Jin Wan seriously. "Apart from that and Shuyan, who else do you know about your love rival?" Jin Wan could not help but think for a moment when the word, love rival, was raised. Since it's a package from America, this matter should have nothing to do with Ji Menggran. As for America, Jin Wan hesitated for a moment. "Apart from In Shuyan, I really don't know who else." Xia Tian's expression was one of exasperation. "Who else is eyeing your husband, this piece of meat? You actually don't know? Do you know if Mo Jingshan has any other women in the country or abroad?" "I'm not too sure. There are only some rumors, but I can't confirm whether it's true or not." Xia Tian rolled her eyes. "You don't even know about such things. Wan, how much do you trust him? Mo Jingshan was a man that could only be chanced upon and not sought after. How many women were eyeing him? How many women wanted to sleep with him? You're not even on guard? But I trust him." "Trust my ass. Now your love rival has thrown a knife right in front of you. This time, it's a dismembered doll wearing a wedding dress and a blade. He's trying to scare and curse you. Who knew what would happen next time? You have to investigate this matter thoroughly. Mo Jingshan had been in America for so long. To him, and Shuyan was only a woman his father wanted to force onto him. Perhaps he didn't care about In Shuyan, but did he not have any other women? Or other women who were eyeing Mo Jingshan covetously? Sending such a doll in a wedding dress, it is obvious that she has a deep grudge against your marriage. If this isn't the provocation of a love rival, what else can it be? All right. Hurry up and go in. You're giving me goosebumps." Xia Tian refused to go in and continued to speak outside the door. "No matter how well Mo Jingshan treats you, he is still a grown man. Before you got married, he must have had his first love, right?" "I don't know." Xia Tian was about to be angered by her. Wan, I'm telling you, if you continue to be so careless, you won't even know which woman will rush to his bed in the future. Mo Jingshan is the Adonis of many unmarried girls in Haicheng and even in the country. He is now the CEO of the Mo Corporation and the only grandson of the Mo family. In the future, if he goes to America to inherit shine, women will rush to him like carps crossing the river. If you don't guard against them, you won't be able to chase them away even if you hold a fly swatter in front of him. Jin Wan, you've always had a grudge against this marriage, but that's in the past. Now that you want to be with Mo Jingshan, you have to fully understand his past. Otherwise, what will you do if something like this happens again? Your love rival has already sent such a thing to you, but you don't even know who the other party is. The enemy is in the dark and you're in the light. You're at a disadvantage." Xia Tian tugged at her earnestly. Jin Wan pulled Xia Tian into the residence and said, "I've long known that there will be many women who like him. Not only in America but in Haicheng, there are many rich young ladies who can't stand me and wish I would disappear as soon as possible. But those who dare to threaten you so openly must have a close relationship with him. I know that Mo Jingshan has always been very indulgent toward you. Speaking of which, is your sexual life harmonious?" Xia Tian suddenly asked. Jin Wan pursed her lips. Forget it. Although your hand is injured, your rosy cheeks clearly indicate that you've been moisturized in various ways. From the way I see it, Mo Jingshan is really attentive toward you. If it was any other woman who has thoughts about Mo Jingshan, they would most likely be jealous to the heavens and explode from anger. Serves you right. How dare you harbor such thoughts toward a married man? Heaven will punish you if you're cheap. Wan, you have to remember. Right now, Mo Jingshan is yours, but there are too many people who want to snatch away this piece of meat. You have to hold on to him tightly. Don't let him disappear. Jinwan rolled her eyes. I'm still fine. Why are you complaining about it? I'm reminding you. Be careful that you don't even know when your meat is snatched away by a wolf. 3 days later, Jinwan's hand wounds had healed. Except for the 2 deep wounds on her palms which couldn't come into contact with water, she could now move her hands normally. However, the skin on her palms needed some time to recover. The professor at T University would be starting classes next week. Jinwan had to return to settle Shinharu's matter first. In her previous life, she was unable to prevent her father's organs from failing. In this life, she definitely could not let Shinharu's evil scheme succeed. Jinwan first gave Ji Hongwen a call, saying that she would return. In the evening when she arrived at the Ji home, she saw Ji Mingran standing by the living room door angrily. Jinwan met Ji Mingran's gaze. Jinwan's expression was calm. Only Ji Mingran's face was filled with anger. She was so agitated that she abruptly stepped out to block Jinwan's path. Jinwan, you actually have the guts to return to the Ji home. What do you mean by this? Previously, you left me in that kind of place and almost caused me to lose half my life. You're so sinister and vicious, and now you're pretending to be a good person in front of Dad? You always say one thing to my face and another behind my back. How can you be so disgusting? Chapter 176. Sinister and vicious. Who are you talking about? Compared to you, how am I worthy of those words? You bribed a psychiatrist to prescribe medicine that would cause your own sister to become mentally weak. If you could even do such a thing, who could be more sinister than you? Taking advantage of my unstable emotions, you encouraged me to divorce every day and even encouraged me to commit suicide to chase Mo Jingshan away. Who could be more vicious than you? Jinwan mercilessly retorted. Because Ji Hongwen had already walked to Ji Mingran's back, his words were clear and cold, not giving in at all. As expected, after hearing these words, Ji Mingran's face turned pale. However, she immediately became bold and confident. You don't have any evidence. What right do you have to push all the blame onto me? How would I know what kind of medicine the doctor prescribed you? After all, you're the one who needs to see a psychiatrist. The one who's sick is you, not me. Who knows if there's something wrong with your brain causing you to have delusions? Ji Mingran angrily said, furthermore, you didn't commit suicide. When did I encourage you to commit suicide? Do you have evidence? Do you have witnesses? It's all your imagination. Don't try to frame me. Thinking back to her previous life when she fell into the bathtub due to excessive blood loss and had no strength to get up, Jinwan wanted to slap Ji Mingran's face. Jinwan's gaze was cold and cold. If you don't want me to slap you, scram. A good dog doesn't block the door. Were you scolding? Previously at the Mo family, I didn't fall out with you in front of everyone because of Dad. Right now, I'm not in the mood to bicker with you. Scram. Ji Mingran stood by the door, refusing to budge. You still want to hit me? This is the Ji family home. Without Mo Jingshan to support you, let's see if you dare to hit. Pa. Without hesitation, Jinwan gave her a slap. Ji Mingran stiffened. She immediately reached out to grab Jinwan's hair with an unwilling expression. Jinwan dodged aside. If not for the injury on her hand, her slap would have been even heavier. Seeing that Ji Mingran was about to go crazy and fight with Jinwan, Ji Hongwen, who had been listening for a long time, suddenly said coldly, Enough. Why are you making a scene in front of our house? Ji Mingran abruptly stiffened. She turned back and met Ji Hongwen's gaze. Her eyes were filled with panic. Dad, it's Jinwan. Ji Hongwen didn't even look at her. He only looked at Jinwan. Come in first. After entering the door, Ji Hongwen asked, What's going on? You and Mingran haven't seen eye to eye recently. What she did last time was indeed out of line, but is what you just said true? Dad, Jinwan has wronged me. Don't listen to her nonsense. Ji Mingran frantically tried to explain. You saw how I looked when I came back that day. I was drenched in the rain for an entire night. I was cold and battered and I almost died outside. She's obviously the one who's starting to hurt her own sister. Shut up. Ji Hongwen looked at her coldly and angrily. He couldn't stand her nonsense. Ji Mingran gritted her teeth and glared at Jinwan. It was clear that she had been frightened outside that night. Jinwan coldly glanced at her. You don't have to be so paranoid. I will indeed tell Dad everything you've done. You won't be able to defend yourself. I didn't do anything. Don't slander me. Jinwan did not continue arguing with her. She calmly said, Dad, I came back today because I have something to tell you. We can talk about Mingran's matter later. Let's talk business first. Ji Hongwen furrowed his brows. Seeing Jin Wan's serious expression, he asked, "What is it? Did something happen? Let's go to your study to talk." Jin Wan was about to head upstairs. "Jin Wan, if there's anything you want to say, just say it here. Don't think of going behind my back to talk bad about me in front of Dad. I'll admit to everything I've done. You can't accuse me of anything I didn't do." Ji Mingran reached out to push Jin Wan. Right now, Jin Wan had no intention of taking Ji Mingran's matter seriously. She did not retreat after being pushed. Instead, she raised her hand to pull Ji Mingran's wrist away, throwing her harshly to the side. She turned to look at her. "Do you think the entire world revolves around you? Do you think Dad and I have to talk about you when we're alone? Who do you think you are? Do you really think you're a dog with just a few plasters on your face?" Shin Haru heard the commotion and walked out. Seeing Jin Wan's fierce expression, she walked over with a smile. "Nwan, why are you throwing such a big tantrum the moment you come back? A few days ago Mungran's phone was smashed because of you, right? As an older sister you're really too insensible. Now that you're Mrs. Mo you're really capable. You dare to be unreasonable with your own younger sister, throwing a tantrum so easily. If the Ji family can't tolerate you, no one is begging you to come back. Why did you make such a ruckus the moment you came back? The Ji family is usually quiet, but the moment you entered, you caused such a ruckus." Jin Wan's gaze was cold and distant. She did not pay any attention to Shin Haru, who was like a clay bodhisattva crossing the river. She only calmly looked at Ji Mingran. "Your weak and pitiful appearance can only fool others at home. Don't disgust others in front of me. Don't you know why your phone was smashed? You circled around half of Haiqing just to follow me. My bodyguard did her job well. She thought you had ulterior motives and only smashed your phone but didn't punch you. That's already because you saw the word Ji in your name. You still have the cheek to make a ruckus at home?" Jin Wan's words were spoken directly in front of Ji Hongwen and Shin Haru. Ji Mingran instantly appeared as though she was facing a great enemy. Her eyes were filled with unconcealable panic. "That day I was only passing by. What right do you have to conclude that I was the one following you? It's clear that you don't like me and intentionally had your bodyguard threaten me. If that bodyguard of yours dared to hit me, if I don't sue her entire family and send them to jail, my surname won't be Ji." Jin Wan coldly smiled. "Look at your face right now. You have a guilty conscience. Although your mouth is shouting loudly, your eyes have long betrayed you." Ji Hongwen did not speak. His brows were furrowed as he stared at his second daughter. Sensing her father's gaze, Ji Mingran finally restrained herself. That night she was truly provoked by Jin Wan to the point where she wanted to kill her. Now that she saw Jin Wan, the hatred in her heart grew even stronger and did not lessen in the slightest. Yet Jin Wan remained indifferent. Even the politeness she displayed on the surface was completely retracted. She was making it clear that she wanted to tear her apart. "Dad, don't believe her." Ji Mingran lowered her voice. Chapter 177. The sound of the teacup shattering caused Ji Mingran to take a step back in fright. The boiling hot tea gradually dripped onto her slippers, and the shattered cups scattered on the ground. Ji Mingran raised her eyes in disbelief. "You only listen to Jin Wan's words and won't listen to my explanation? Do I still need an explanation?" Ji Hongwen's expression was cold. "You're my biological daughter. Do you think I don't know your personality? Back then you threw a tantrum at me because of Jin Wan's marriage to Mo Jingshan. From then on, I knew you had feelings for your brother-in-law. On account of the fact that you're my biological daughter, I gave you some face and didn't expose you. Now you're the one causing trouble. You can't blame anyone." Ji Mingran appeared as though she had heard a joke. "Since you know what I'm thinking, you still gave all the things I like to Jin Wan. Is there anyone as biased as you?" Ji Hongwen's expression was instantly enraged. Since young, whatever you liked or what Jin Wan liked, as long as you opened your mouth, she would unconditionally give it to you. Your two daughters have been spoiled by me. She is indeed arrogant outside and is often criticized by others, but she only treats you, her younger sister. Whatever you want, she will give it to you. What else do you want? Is it because you're used to snatching things from Jin Wan's hands? Now that she refuses to give her legal husband to you, are you going to become enemies with her?" As he spoke, Ji Hongwen angrily pointed at the pale Ji Mingran. "You still have the cheek to stand here and cause a ruckus. You unfilial daughter, kneel down." "Me? Kneel down?" Ji Mingran glared at him with reddened eyes. "Kneel down." Ji Hongwen's face was filled with undeniable determination and anger. Seeing the terrible relationship between Ji Menggran and Jinwan today, he was so angry that his heart, liver, and lungs were aching. Old Ji, calm down. Menggran is still a child. Why are you saying all this to her? Everyone has the right to like someone. She didn't do anything bad. It's normal for a girl to fight for a man she likes. Besides, she didn't do anything, did she? Shin Haru saw that Ji Hongwen was truly enraged. Standing by the side, she hurriedly raised her hand and patted his chest twice. Ji Hongwen's expression was ugly as he ignored Shin Haru. He continued to stare at Ji Menggran, who was gritting her teeth and refusing to kneel. I'm asking you to kneel. Are you deaf? Can't you hear me? I'm not kneeling. Why should I kneel? Ji Menggran yelled angrily. She turned around and ran upstairs. Seeing that Ji Hongwen was about to drag her down with a cold expression, Shin Haru hurriedly pulled him back. Don't be so angry. Jinwan is still here. The house was originally peaceful, but the moment she came back, she caused so much trouble. Don't push all the blame onto Menggran. Shut up. Ji Hongwen suddenly looked at her. What did you just say? Jinwanji is my daughter. Why can't she return to this house? Shin Haru was slightly unhappy that she was suddenly being vented. She removed her hand from his arm and spoke with an ugly expression. I saw that you kept blaming Menggran. My heart ached for the child, so I spoke up for her. But look at it now. In your eyes, aside from your daughter Jinwan, no one else can speak up, right? Ji Hongwen frowned. It was clear that he did not intend to give her any face. Shin Haru held back her anger and did not speak. She raised her eyes to look at Jinwan, only to see Jinwan's cold and indifferent expression. She was so angry that her teeth were itching. This little wench. Previously, when she returned home, she was still somewhat restrained. Now, she did not even bother to restrain herself and immediately started a fight. This was not a festive occasion. She suddenly rushed back to the Ji family and started a fight. What exactly did she mean? Footsteps could be heard from upstairs. Ji Menggran quickly walked down the stairs with a suitcase in her hands. Jinwan saw this scene and coldly raised her brows. She did not speak. Ji Hongwen narrowed his eyes in anger. You want to leave? Fine, if you dare to walk out of the house with a suitcase, don't ever come back. Scram. Our Ji family doesn't have a daughter like you. Ji Menggran's footsteps abruptly froze. However, she did not look at anyone as she dragged her suitcase down the stairs. She glanced at Jinwan one last time before pulling open the door and walking out. Aya, this child, why is she leaving? Shin Haru muttered. She then looked at Jinwan and softly complained, how can there be such a sister? No matter how wrong Menggran is, at the very least, she has never done anything that goes against reason. Why can't you tolerate your own sister and have to force her to leave? Are you only satisfied when Menggran cuts off all ties with the family? Are you only happy when your family is destroyed? Will it kill you to speak less? Ji Hongwen turned to glare at her angrily. Shin Haru was about to speak again when she suddenly heard Jinwan speak mildly. If I return to the Ji family, how can the Ji family be destroyed? On the contrary. Auntie Shin, if you continue to stay in the Ji family, that might not be the case. Shin Haru furrowed her brows and glared fiercely at Jinwan. Nwan, what do you mean by that? Jinwan revealed a very mild smile. When she heard the sound of a car passing by, she turned to leave and did not explain further. Ji Menggran drove a car out of the Ji family's garage, only to see Jinwan standing in the front yard. If it weren't for her father, Ji Menggran would really want to step on the accelerator and kill her. No, she had to endure it. She would not give up everything she wanted so easily. However, she could not allow Jinwan to lead her by the nose. There must be a way to control her. Ji Menggran pressed on the car horn and lowered the car window, shouting, if you don't want to die, scram. It was as though Jinwan could see through her heart. She stood there without moving, coldly and indifferently glancing at her. Ji Menggran angrily got out of the car. She slammed the car door and walked toward her. Do you really think that with Dad backing you up, you can be so arrogant? Jinwan, let me tell you. Where do you want to go? Jinwan appeared as though she did not hear her words. She only smiled faintly and glanced at Ji Menggran's furious expression. Seeing Jinwan's expression, Ji Menggran was about to go crazy. She gritted her teeth and glared at her. The Ji family can't contain me, but there's definitely a place that can. Jinwan smiled. She was slightly taller than Ji Menggran. She leaned forward slightly, and Ji Menggran felt an indescribable pressure. She took a step back. Chapter 178. Ji Menggran's heart sank and she took another step back. Her legs were so weak that she could barely stand. She could only lean against the car behind her to steady herself. Her face was pale, and she looked at Jinwan in disbelief and guilt at the fake smile on Jinwan's face. How did she know? How did he know about the friends she had made? How did she know what she was thinking? Could it be that Jinwan was possessed by some kind of demon or ghost? She even had the ability to predict things? No, that was impossible. Something must have gone wrong somewhere. Jinwan guessed that Jinwan had already investigated her and found out about the friends she had made before, so she followed the clues to the melon. That must be it. Even though she thought this way, Ji Minggran still stared at Jinwan in fear. She could not understand why Jinwan had become so unpredictable. Ji Minggran's entire body was extremely tense. Jinwan only looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. She did not have any other expression or movement. Jinwan reached out and patted her shoulder. Minggran, as a person it's best to be quiet and not have too many thoughts. If you want to destroy someone you must be careful not to destroy yourself first. Ji Minggran leaned against the car. Her expression was stiff like a fossil, and her entire body was about to slide off the car door. She raised her hand to push Jinwan's hand away, avoiding her touch. Originally, Ji Minggran was not afraid of her words at all. However, earlier in Jinwan's eyes, there seemed to be something unexplainable. It was a kind of hatred that had been hidden for many years and thousands of words. Ji Minggran could not understand it. The only thing she knew was fear. An indescribable coldness from Jinwan's gaze caused Ji Minggran to feel fear in her bones. The coldness that seeped into her bones was indescribable. Since things had already developed to this stage, Jinwan did not intend to keep Ji Minggran in suspense any longer. You're on your own. Jinwan's gaze swept past her face. Her lips curved into a smile that Ji Minggran wanted to personally tear apart. She elegantly and indifferently turned to return inside. Ji Minggran had been standing by the car door in a daze. She heard the door open and close. After confirming that Jinwan had entered, she slowly and carefully exhaled. She suddenly sniffed, picked up her new cell phone, and opened the videos of Jinwan that she had secretly taken before. In the videos, Jinwan was like a proud peacock looking down on everyone, full of flaws, and it was easy for her to catch them. These videos were what she wanted to show Mo Jingshan, to let him see how spoiled Jinwan was in life. After watching the videos again, Ji Minggran's palms were covered with a layer of sweat. In just one night, Jinwan had become so uncontrollable. She was good at scheming. She appeared innocent, but in fact she was terrifyingly black-bellied. She could even accurately grasp everything she had done and not done. She could figure out her thoughts so thoroughly. She did not even have a chance to retaliate. It was as though she had been led by the nose by Jinwan. No matter how much a person changed, it was impossible for her to become like this. In just one night she was able to understand all of her goals. She was even able to predict and guess things that had yet to happen. Her heart and original plans were completely exposed. Jinwan's body, was she hiding some secret? There must be a secret. Otherwise it shouldn't be like this. Everything was too illogical. Everything was within Jinwan's control. This was too illogical. After Jinwan entered, the villa had already regained its peace due to Shinharu's pretense. Minggran has really left? Seeing that Jinwan had returned alone, Shinharu asked with a frown. Jinwan calmly glanced at her. Auntie Shin, I really can't understand people like you. Back then, in order to stay in the Ji family safely, you cut off all ties with your own son just like that. You're so heartless, yet now you're so concerned about a stepdaughter. Won, what are you saying? Although my tone earlier was a little harsh, didn't I still hope for the two of you to live well together? Shinharu smiled as she tucked her hair behind her ears. She assumed the attitude of a good wife and mother. Let's not talk about the past. All these years, it's been you and Minggran in front of me. I know very well who's close and who's distant. Jinwan smiled, but her smile did not reach her eyes. She looked toward Ji Hongwen, whose expression was still ugly. Dad, let's talk? From the moment Jinwan entered the door, Ji Hongwen knew that this child definitely had something to say. He said, wait for me in the study. This child, she's still so secretive. I've already married into the Ji family for so many years. It's not like I'm an outsider. What can't she say in front of me? No matter how hard Shinharu tried to hold it in, her tone was still somewhat strange. Jinwan was about to head upstairs when she passed by Shinharu. Her footsteps seemed to subconsciously pause. Using a voice that only she could hear, she lowered her voice and said, Auntie Shin, I haven't settled the debt with Shengyihan back then. Don't think that you can protect him by cutting off all ties with him. You've been hiding in the Ji family for so many years. You must be tired, right? Shinharu's expression faltered. She abruptly turned to look at her. Jinwan smiled at her. I advise you not to continue wearing a mask in the Ji family. It's so tiring. Finishing her words, Jinwan did not wait for Shinharu's expression and headed upstairs. She did not wait for long in the study before Ji Hongwen directly entered. You suddenly came back in such a hurry. What do you want to say? Dad, Auntie Shin has been married to you for many years. I know this. In the past, although I wasn't sensible and didn't treat her well at home, I didn't especially target her. You should know this very well. Jinwan slowly opened her mouth to speak. Ji Hongwen nodded. And some time ago, I took away a few of the so-called health supplements she bought for you from overseas and had them professionally analyzed. As Jinwan spoke, she took out a stack of papers from her bag and placed it on the table in the study. These are the results of the analysis. Please take a look. Ji Hongwen walked to the table and put on his glasses. He then picked up the medical analysis report and carefully read through it. After reading through it, Ji Hongwen was not as angry as Jinwan thought he would be. He stood by the table and narrowed his eyes. After a moment of silence he said, Don't make this matter public. You're my daughter. I believe 100% in every word you say. However, this matter cannot be concluded so easily. I need to confirm it first before speaking. Jinwan was about to speak when she suddenly paused. She turned to look at the door behind her. Outside the door there was a figure carefully standing there. As though afraid of being discovered, he quietly hid by the door, revealing only a small part of his shadow. If Jinwan was not standing so close to the door and was more sensitive, she would not have noticed him. She looked in the direction of the door before turning to look at Ji Hongwen. She slowly curved her lips at him. Chapter 179. Jinwan did not purposely lower her voice. She only smiled and said, Dad, do you still remember that when I was young I had an assignment that combined guilty conscience and walls have ears to form a sentence? At the time I didn't know how to form it. Now it seems like there's finally an answer to this question. The person outside clearly understood the meaning behind Jinwan's words. She hid outside the door wanting to leave. However, knowing that she had already been discovered, she stood stiffly outside the door for a moment before abruptly pushing open the study door and entering. Nwan, you can't say things like that. It's true that walls have ears, but having a guilty conscience has nothing to do with me. Earlier, I was preparing to return to my room to take something when I heard you and your dad talking in the study. Out of curiosity I came over to listen in. In the end I heard you framing me. Shinharu had an aggrieved expression as she glanced at the cold and expressionless Ji Hongwen. Old Ji, it's true that Nwan is your daughter, but the motives behind her words and actions are too obvious. First, she chased Menggran away and now she's dealing with me. Shinharu knew how to act aggrieved and so did Jinwan. Jinwan turned to look at Ji Hongwen, a bitter smile on her lips. Dad, you can choose not to believe me but you can't not believe the analysis of the medicine. As your daughter, I can't possibly act like an outsider and tamper with your medicine. Your daughter hopes for you to live to a ripe old age, but that's not necessarily the case for some people. Shinharu's eyelids twitched. Right now Jinwan really knew how to use both soft and hard tactics. Her actions of taking a step back as though she was aggrieved were clearly forcing Ji Hongwen to take this matter seriously. To be able to block his escape route so fiercely, he really couldn't underestimate her. Dad, if you don't want to make a big deal out of this matter because of your past relationship with Auntie Shen and want to settle it with her alone, I'll just say it here. I won't participate in how it should be settled. Jinwan once again took a step back. It sounded like she was taking a step back, but it was clear that she did not intend to turn the matter into a small one. Nwan, your words aren't right. I clearly didn't do anything. Right now, you're making it sound as though your father is trying to protect me. Yes, he's your father, but he's also my husband. Who would use such methods to harm their own husband's life? Jinwan's face darkened. Shinharu saw that Jinwan was so insistent and had no choice but to grit her teeth. He had to endure it. If he didn't, who knew what Jinwan would do to catch him off guard? Ji Hongwen's expression was a bit dark. Just as Jinwan said, he didn't intend to make a big deal out of it whether it was true or not. The Ji family's business was deteriorating day by day. He was so busy that he did not have the time to care about the family's matters. Everything in the family had been handed over to Shinharu. If things were really as Jinwan said right now, for the sake of his face he could not make a fuss like this. Nwan, go back to your room and rest. Ji Hongwen suddenly said. He did not mention anything about the medicine. Jinwan pursed her lips and did not speak. She then smiled. All right. After returning to her own bedroom, Jinwan entered. Her expression was still calm and indifferent. She paused for a moment and seemed to have understood her father's thoughts. She picked up her phone and casually flipped through it. Then he opened a hidden monitoring software in his phone and watched all the images taken by the surveillance camera. When he saw the scene he wanted, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he put his phone back into his pocket without batting an eyelid. At this moment in the study, Shinharu could not guess what Ji Hongwon was thinking, but the oppressive atmosphere in the study made her feel a little diffident. She walked over to him, smiling as she said, "Old Ji, in the past when I first married into the family, Nwan never gave me any good looks, but at the very least she was able to remain silent and calm at home. Now perhaps she thinks I'm too easy to bully, so—" Ji Hongwon abruptly raised his hand and gave her a harsh slap. He angrily said, "Don't think that just because I'm protecting you, I'll believe your nonsense. Back when your son cut off all ties with you and was chased out of the Ji family, I still haven't forgotten the look in his eyes. Has he completely cut off all ties with you? The two of you, mother and son, have long been eyeing the Ji family covetously, haven't you?" Shinharu's body trembled. She stood stiffly for a long time before reaching out to pull his arm. "Old Ji, don't be fooled by Jinwan's words. I really didn't do such a thing. You also know how hard it was for me to cut off all ties with Ihan back then. You also know that after so many years, as long as someone mentions his name, I can't control myself. As a mother, my heart has always been uncomfortable, but you can't use his matter to suspect me again and again. Yes, I admit that Ihan has returned to the Sheng family now. That matter back then was his fault, but that's all in the past. I swear that everything Ihan has done after returning to the Sheng family has nothing to do with me. Regardless of whether it's Sheng Ihan or the Sheng family, it no longer has anything to do with me." Ji Hongwon coldly smiled. "Is that so? I swear to the heavens and earth. I've stayed in the Ji family for so many years, wholeheartedly protecting this family for you." Shinharu's eyes were red. Ji Hongwon chuckled. "What's with the medicine? Even if Nwan finds you an eyesore without any evidence, she would definitely not say such things. The analysis report of the medicine is right here. How can you explain it?" Shinharu immediately refuted. "Her analysis report is fake." "Fake?" Ji Hongwon coldly stared at her. "What evidence can you bring out to prove that this report is fake? Isn't it just taking the medicine out for an examination? Then check it again. Check it again in front of all of us. I don't believe that she can do anything in front of all of us. She took this kind of analysis report to frame me. Who knows where she got the medicine from to make a fake report?" Ji Hongwon did not speak. His expression was still unhappy as he glanced at her. Shinharu had an aggrieved expression. "Look, we still don't know the truth. Just because of a few words from Jinwan, you no longer trust me. You don't even give me any face. Your daughter is really smart now. She knows how to drive a wedge between us husband and wife." Ji Hongwon was filled with anger. When he heard these words, his expression turned even uglier. Without a word, he abruptly walked out of the study. Seeing this, Shinharu's eyes brightened. She turned and followed him out. "Old Ji, we have to check those medicine again. You have to help me clear my name. Otherwise, how can I continue living in this family in the future?" Ji Hongwon was about to head to his room with Shinharu following behind. When the two of them passed by Jinwan's bedroom, they saw that Jinwan had already come out. Jinwan stood by the door, playing with her phone in her fingers. Clearly she had heard Shinharu's words. Her eyes carried a hint of mockery as though she had seen through her earlier. Chapter 180. In the hallway, Shinharu did not look at Ji Hongwon's expression. She was only looking at the chilling smile on Jinwan's face. Jinwan's expression really caused Shinharu's teeth to itch. She could no longer hold it in and said provocatively, "Nwan, didn't you insist earlier that there's a problem with my medicine? Why don't we take it for a new test and see who's the one lying?" Jinwan calmly glanced at her and then smiled ambiguously at the unhappy Ji Hongwon. "Dad, you've been in the business world for so many years. Right now, it's clear that there's a problem with her attitude. Isn't this admitting that there's something fishy going on?" Shinharu furrowed her brows at Jinwan. She unhappily raised her voice and angrily said, "What problem can I have? You insist that there's poison in the medicine and even brought out some analysis report. Now that I'm saying that I want to take it for a new test, you're saying that I'm admitting that there's something fishy going on? Why are you saying everything? You're deliberately making things difficult for me, blocking my way with every word. I think you're the one with a problem." Shinharu narrowed her eyes at her. "Look at you, you're so young, yet you're so good at lying. My matter has already been turned into this. Don't tell me that you're also trying to frame Meng Ran. Jinwan smiled mildly and did not speak. Seeing that she did not speak, Shinharu glanced at her and observed Jinwan's expression. After confirming that Jinwan had nothing to say, she raised her brows with some satisfaction. Nuan, did you think that it was too easy to pull down Meng Ran's position in the Ji family, so you planned to make a move on me? Today Meng Ran ran away from home just like that. In the blink of an eye you're targeting me. Are you trying to swallow the Ji family whole? Your father is still alive. Isn't your appetite a little too big? Auntie Shen, there's no need for you to fan the flames. I've brought evidence back. No matter how you refute, it's useless. The evidence speaks for itself. Why don't we be more practical? You say I'm framing you, but where's the evidence? Jinwan retorted, appearing as though she was innocently walking into Shinharu's trap. Shinharu chuckled. Evidence, I have it. I'm just afraid you'll cry when the time comes. After all, I'm already so old. I've thought things through more clearly. As long as the misunderstanding is resolved, it's fine as long as your father understands me. But if your malicious nature is exposed, who knows how Mo Jingshan and the Mo family will look at you in the future. With that, without waiting for Ji Hongwen to speak, and without looking at Jinwan's eyes, she turned and walked quickly to the master bedroom. Seeing that Shinharu had entered, Ji Hongwen thoughtfully followed in to take a look. Jinwan, on the other hand, unhurriedly followed behind. The moment she entered the master bedroom, she saw Shinharu nimbly opening the drawer by the bed and taking out a large pile of medicine. The medicines that Jinwan thought were problematic were laid out one by one. She turned back to look at Ji Hongwen. Old Ji, these are the medicines I bought for you, right? Ji Hongwen nodded. Old Ji, this is the medicine I bought for you, right? Ji Hongwen, however, furrowed his brows. Seeing how she could not wait to get away from her crime, and how she placed all the medicine, it was as though she knew all along. This woman whom he had married for so many years, he had never seriously considered whether she had any other intentions. However, at this moment, there was no need for Jinwan to say anything. He could already see that there were too many problems hidden within. Although he had taken these medicines almost every day, he had never taken them in front of her. She actually knew that these medicines were all in the drawer. Even after buying them for so long, she could still clearly distinguish each bottle. If one were to say that there was nothing fishy about this, no one would believe it. Seeing that Ji Hongwen's expression was cold and silent, Shinharu turned her face toward Jinwan. Nuan, are you sure that these were the medicines you brought for a checkup? Jinwan found it laughable. Auntie Shin, why are you so anxious? My father's drawer has quite a lot of medicine. The medicine bottles all look the same. All sorts of blood pressure and sugar-lowering medicines are placed on top. You took them all out just like that. Those who don't know would think that you've been staring at the placement of these medicines every day to see if they have been taken. Of course, Shinharu would not lose her composure so quickly because of these words. Previously, when Jinwan came back twice, she already felt that she was suspicious of something. Furthermore, after the reversal at the Mo family home, she could tell that Jinwan was indeed different now. Shinharu's heart had always been filled with lingering fear. She was afraid that Jinwan would discover something and she would be caught off guard, so she had long made preparations. I bought these medicines. When I was on vacation overseas, I passed by a pharmacy and carefully picked them out. Every single bottle was handled by me. Of course, I'm very clear about it. Shinharu's expression was calm and fearless. Jinwan held back a smile as she gazed at the emerald bracelet on her wrist. Auntie Shin's life sure is comfortable. You said that you would go on a vacation and you could. The bracelet on your wrist is also very special. Normally, it's rare to see such a good quality. If I remember correctly, my father gave it to you many years ago, right? It's worth tens of millions. The more you wear it, the better it looks. I wonder if you've lent it to someone else to wear? Of course not. I've always treasured this bracelet and have never taken it off. Everything your father gave me, I've always treated it like a treasure by my side. How could I possibly lend it to someone else? Shinharu did not understand the meaning behind Jinwan's sudden change in topic. She looked at her with a guarded gaze, but her words were determined to protect the relationship between her and Ji Hongwen as an old married couple. Is that so? Jinwan heard her words and directly raised her phone, tapping on the screen. Instantly, a clear image appeared on the screen. In the video, the bedside table and its surroundings could be seen. The time of the video was also more than 20 days ago. A pair of hands could be seen quickly taking out all the medicine from the drawer. Boxes after boxes were replaced with other medicine that looked the same. Even the amount of medicine in each bottle was the same. Looking closely, the color of the medicine was the same and there was no special smell. Even if the medicine was replaced, it would not be easy to find out. Although she could only see the movements of the pair of hands in the image, they were very white and wore an emerald bracelet. The moment she saw the image on Jinwan's phone, Shinharu's expression immediately froze. She abruptly returned to her senses and finally understood that Jinwan was actually trying to trick her. Chapter 181. Shinharu clearly knew that there was no turning back, but she still wanted to argue. You casually took something that was recorded from who knows where and said that I changed the medicine? Jinwan, you're really good at playing with high technology these days. You can say whatever you want to say. Whatever you want to fabricate, you can. This counts as high technology? Jinwan looked at her in amusement. What era are we in? It's just a surveillance camera. What's so difficult about it? You actually dare to place surveillance cameras in your father's bedroom. You still have the cheek to say that, this is my father's bedroom after all. I won't take pictures of places that shouldn't be taken. Jinwan coldly interrupted her, walked to the table, and took down a tiny surveillance camera from under the lampshade of the lamp placed on the table. Although it only captured the scene on the table, it's enough, isn't it? Any Shin? The evidence was conclusive, and the evidence was closely linked. She did not let go of any opportunity to force Shinharu into a dead end. Shinharu's gaze was stiff as she stared at the miniature camera in Jinwan's hands. She abruptly turned to Ji Hongwen. Old Ji, listen to my explanation. Ji Hongwen's expression could no longer be described as simple anger and fear. What's there to explain? Is there a need to explain? I really didn't expect that back then. I pitied you and brought you into the Ji family. In the end, you'll personally send me to the gates of hell. You're really good. What a vicious and merciless person. Shinharu panicked. Old Ji, the medicine really has nothing to do with me. After all, my face wasn't even captured. How can she be so sure that it's me? Even in court, there has to be conclusive evidence. How can she be so sure that it's me just because of this bracelet? The bracelet was given to you by me. Jinwan can't recognize it, but do you think I can't? We've been married for so many years. I can recognize your hand the moment it appeared in the video. Is there a need for Jinwan to confirm it? Ji Hongwen's eyes were filled with coldness. His anger could no longer be appeased. Shinharu refused to give up. Ji Hongwen didn't doubt Jinwan's words and didn't want to make a fuss. Now that the truth was in front of him, not only could he lose face, but the fire in his heart was also burning. With a slap, he slapped her again, venting all the fire in his heart on her, slapping her hard and hard. Jinwan tossed the miniature pinhole camera into her pocket and did not say another word. She expressionlessly watched Shinharu's disheveled expression. If it didn't concern her father's life, she wouldn't mind continuing to play with Shinharu. However, if the matter of these drugs was not exposed, Dad's health would only deteriorate. She had done what she had to do. She wouldn't interfere with how his woman was going to be dealt with. Shinharu held onto her swollen face. She turned to see Jinwan standing by the side, watching the fire burn. Because she was too angry and hateful, Shinharu gritted her teeth and forced herself to calm down. She then glanced at the enraged Ji Hongwen and lowered her head. She pitifully said in a soft voice, All right. I admit it. Old Ji, I'll explain everything clearly to you. Actually, the father of the man I married is the current head of the Sheng family. He wanted to borrow my hands to swallow a sum of money from the Ji family. Initially, I didn't know that the medicine was poisonous. They threatened me and forced me to give it to you. Later on, I found out. I didn't change the medicine to clear my name. Instead, I was afraid that you would really eat it and harm your body. That's why I secretly changed it. Firstly, I didn't want you to find out. Secondly, I didn't want the Sheng family to know. Old Ji, I really did it for you. However, I've lived in the Sheng family before. Those people are scheming and I can't win against them. I didn't want to be forced to such a state, she kept explaining, hoping to salvage the situation. However, her gaze landed on Jinwan's side. She discovered that Jinwan seemed to have seen through her expression and was only smiling mildly. Shinharu's heart thumped. She did not dare to look at her, afraid that Jinwan would see through her. Ji Hongwen resisted the urge to rip the bracelet off her wrist and smash it. He coldly said, From today onwards you're not allowed to go anywhere. You can only stay in this room. You're not allowed to answer a single phone call. You're not allowed to interact with the Sheng family or any outsiders. Everything in the Ji family's villa will be handed over to the housekeeper. The matters in the company that have been handed over to you will be handed over to someone else. Don't even think about getting a single cent from the Ji family. Shinharu's body abruptly swayed. She took a step back and sat down on the bed. Her eyes trembled as she looked at him. Old Ji, you can't treat me like this. If you say another word, I'll immediately scram out of the Ji family. Don't blame me for not leaving you with your last bit of face. Ji Hongwen said impatiently. Shinharu immediately shut her mouth, not daring to speak any further. Being locked up at home was better than being chased out. As long as she waited for her punishment, there might be a chance for things to turn for the better. If she was chased out just like this, not only would she lose all her face, she might not even have the chance to make a comeback with Ji Hongwen in the future. After enduring for a while, she sat on the edge of the bed quietly, not daring to say another word. 2 days later, Jinwan took the time to visit the hospital. She had originally planned to use the fact that her hand had recovered to visit Dr. Qin and see if he had the time. If he had the time, she would like to treat him to a meal. After all, she had brought him quite a bit of trouble when she asked him to help with the drug analysis. Regardless of how much face Qin Siding had given Mo Jingshan from her level, she still had to formally thank him. The moment she entered the hospital, she suddenly saw an ambulance stop by the entrance. A person covered in blood was being carried in by the medical staff. Jinwan stood by the hospital entrance. From the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw a figure running out of the ambulance. She never expected it to be Shinianj. She then saw that Shinianj's hands and clothes were also covered in blood. Her complexion was pale as she followed the medical staff in. When she passed by, Jinwan asked with concern, "Miss Shi? Did something happen?" Shinianj's footsteps paused. She turned to see Jinwan. In her panic, she only nodded politely at Jinwan. She did not say much and continued to run in. The medical staff who followed behind shouted, "Everyone make way, make way. There's a huge car accident ahead. There's an injured person behind. Make way." Jinwan immediately took a step back and saw another person covered in blood being pushed in. Chapter 182. When the medical staff went in, Jinwan walked up to her. "Miss Shi, are you all right? There's so much blood on your body. If you're injured, go and deal with it quickly. Is it your friend or someone else inside? I'll stay and talk to the doctor for you. Go and check your wounds." "I'm fine." Shinianj turned her eyes and raised her hand to show Jinwan the blood on her hand and body. "I'm not injured. The blood is all theirs. My driver and assistant are injured. They're seriously injured. I'm fine." At this time, many reporters ran in from outside the hospital. While filming the situation in the hospital, they came over to ask, "Excuse me, are you the family or friends of the injured? Can anyone tell us in detail about the heavy car accident on Yuanyang Avenue?" Outside the emergency room, there was a sudden chaos because of the reporter's intrusion. Shinianj did not speak. Jinwan was about to separate her from the reporters when suddenly, a low male voice came from behind the crowd. "Get out of the way." That voice was unbelievably cold. Jinwan turned her head abruptly and saw Qin Siding standing there expressionlessly in a white coat. As soon as Qin Siding appeared, all the medical staff on the first floor of the hospital fell into silence. No one dared to speak loudly. The reporters were stunned. When they turned back to see that it was a doctor who was so rude, they directly raised their cameras to point at him. However, before the reporters could speak, the hospital's security guards had rushed out from behind Qin Siding and chased the reporters out. As they were chased away, they said sternly, "The emergency room is not a place for reporters to film. Get out quickly. Don't block here and delay the doctor's treatment of the injured. Go." In an instant, the surroundings finally quieted down. Qin Siding glanced at Jinwan coldly and indifferently, and then, as if inadvertently, his eyes fell on Shinianj, who was standing behind Jinwan. Seeing Shinianj standing there with a pale face and not speaking, he walked over. The man's voice was low and cold. "Where are you hurt?" This question was clearly directed at Shinianj. Shinianj clearly did not expect that the hospital she was brought to by the ambulance was actually the hospital where Qin Siding was. She was silent for a moment. There was no obvious expression on her pale face. She only said mildly, "I'm not hurt." When she answered, Shinianj did not look at Qin Siding. Her eyes were cold and clear, as cold as Qin Siding's. Qin Siding had one hand in the pocket of his white coat. His cold eyes swept over her, and a cold smile appeared on his lips. "That's true. Miss Shi's life has always been tough." At this moment, Shinianj abruptly turned to look at him and met Qin Siding's cold gaze. Her gaze was calm and her tone was cold. "Right now, my driver and assistant are seriously injured. Their lives are unknown. Dr. Qin can target me, but please don't add insult to injury at this time. Qin Sighting scoffed coldly before sneering coldly, I really couldn't tell that Miss Sher actually has a conscience toward the people around you. That conscience of yours that was eaten by a dog has been slowly growing back after all these years in America. Shirniange did not speak anymore and stared at him. Jinwan did not wish to interfere in other people's emotional matters, but she could not bear to listen any further. She moved closer to Qin Sighting's side and said softly, Dr. Qin, when Miss Sher ran in earlier, she seemed to be limping. She might have hurt the tendons in her leg or injured her ankle. Her complexion is so bad. Although the blood on her body is not hers, she must have been frightened. You're a man. Don't stab her heart at a time like this, okay? At a time like this, he was still rubbing salt on Shirniange's wounds? She really could not tell that this man, who clearly held a scalpel to save lives every day, was actually such a cold-blooded and heartless fellow. Frightened? What does frightened count as? Qin Sighting said coldly and meaningfully, even if a person with a heart of stone was pierced by 1,000 arrows, they would not feel anything. If a few words of mine could stab her heart, she would not be Shirniange. After finishing his words, he abruptly turned to leave. Although Jinwan wanted to accompany Miss Sher, who appeared to be in a sorry state both physically and mentally, the two of them were not familiar with each other. Furthermore, the purpose of her visit today was to thank Dr. Qin. After hesitating for a moment, she turned to leave the crowd. Qin Sighting took the lead and entered the elevator. Before the doors closed, Jinwan rushed in. Qin Sighting glanced at her indifferently. His gaze was cold and indifferent. Clearly he was not in the mood to speak. The elevator ascended slowly. Jinwan watched the tall and cold man dressed in a white coat and chuckled teasingly. You clearly care about her, yet you insist on acting like you're heartless. You men's hearts can be considered a needle at the bottom of the ocean. Qin Sighting's expression was heavy and he did not speak. Isn't your consultation room on the 16th floor of the hospital? The speed of this hospital's elevator is so slow, and there are often calls from other floors in the middle. You used such a short time to come down from the 16th floor. Clearly you rushed down the stairs in one breath. You rushed to the first floor with the fastest speed possible and saw Miss Sher. After confirming that the one injured in the car accident was not her, you began to act as though you wanted to freeze the other party into ice. What's the point? Qin Sighting coldly glanced at her. Do you women all have so much to say? Jinwan raised her brows and did not speak further. After all, she did not understand the situation and could not speak further. Isn't your hand already healed? Why did you suddenly come to the hospital? Qin Sighting directly changed the topic, looking at her unhappily. I came to thank you. Previously you helped me bandage up my wound, and the medicine you prescribed for me were all very effective. Also, you helped me analyze my father's medication. Recently, I've really troubled you with many things, so I wanted to properly thank you. Qin Sighting snorted indifferently. There's no need to thank me. If you want to thank someone, go thank your man. Seeing Jinwan's puzzled gaze, he coldly reprimanded, I've been so busy all day. If it weren't for your man constantly pushing your problems onto my head and urging me to resolve them as soon as possible, those medicines would have been in my drawer until the end of time. Jinwan? He was really frank and straightforward. Although that's the case, I've troubled you. I originally wanted to treat you to a meal, but since you're so busy, we'll talk about it when you have time. Jinwan's gaze shifted and she suddenly smiled. When the day comes, Jing Shen and I will treat you. Call Nan Heng and Miss Sher as well. Hearing the three words Miss Sher, Qin Sighting directly snorted coldly. I'm not going. Jinwan? Qin Sighting's attitude today was as though he had been stung by a bee. He did not give her any face at all, and could not even be bothered to show basic courtesy. Jinwan also did not continue adding oil to the fire. At night, they returned to the Yu Garden Villa. Auntie Chin said that Mr. Mo had already been back for a while. Jinwan returned to her room. When she pushed open the bedroom door, she heard the sound of water coming from the bathroom. Chapter 183. Hearing the phone ring, Jinwan originally did not plan to answer it. She guessed that Mo Jingshan would be done showering soon, so she waited for him to come out and answer it himself. However, the phone kept vibrating. After a while it continued to vibrate. It was already so late. Was there something urgent at the company? Jinwan glanced at the number displayed. Only then did she realize that it was an international call. The number was from Los Angeles, America. The sound of water continued in the bathroom. Jinwan stared at the string of numbers for a long time until the phone continued vibrating stubbornly in her hand. She composed herself and picked up the call. Hello, it's not convenient for Jing Shin to pick up the phone right now. If there's anything important, please call back later. She did not hang up immediately after speaking and waited for the other party to respond. However, the other party did not speak. Hello, can you hear me? Jinwan asked mildly. The other party did not speak. The other party did not speak. Perhaps women were born with an especially sharp sixth sense. Jinwan's gaze was fixed in the direction of the bathroom. Behind the door, there was fog and the sound of running water. If you're not going to speak, I'll hang up. Jing Shin is currently showering. When he comes out, I'll have him call you back. Jinwan's tone was mild. Her words seemed unintentional, but they set off a silent ripple in the peaceful night. The phone was abruptly hung up, followed by the ear-piercing busy tone. From start to finish, the person who called did not say a single word. However, Jinwan could sense that the other party's mood was extremely unhappy. Jinwan sat on the sofa holding his phone in a daze. The sound of water in the bathroom and the night outside complemented each other. She did not sleep well at the Ji home previously, and sleep quickly swept over her. Just as she was about to fall asleep on the sofa, a cool and wet arm reached over from behind her waist. She shivered abruptly, and the phone slipped out of her grip and fell to the ground. You're done showering? Jinwan's head naturally leaned against his shoulder. She said sleepily, there was a call for you earlier. I picked it up, but the other party did not speak. Mo Jingshin's hand landed on her waist. In the next second he placed her on the bed. Jinwan hadn't taken a shower yet. She didn't want to sleep so early, but she was really sleepy. She frowned and finally couldn't help asking, aren't you going to call him back? Mo Jingshin pressed down on her body, who was about to get up. He lifted the blankets and pulled her into his embrace. He kissed her forehead, saying softly, there's no need. He didn't even look at his phone after he came out. In the dead of the night, Jinwan turned over in her sleep. She was still in Mo Jingshin's arms. She opened her eyes and looked at where his phone was. It seemed like his phone didn't make any more noises. She was really too sleepy. Recently, Jinwan often felt sleepy. Last night, when she had dinner at the Ji home, she also did not have much of an appetite and felt weak all over. She glanced in that direction again, then closed her eyes again and leaned into the man's embrace to sleep. In the dark night, the room was silent. The next day, when Jinwan received a call from the police station, she was rushing to the studio. Hello, Miss Ji. This is the Central City Police Station. May I ask if you know Madame Xia Tian? Jinwan was startled. I do. She's my friend and also a member of our studio. What's wrong? Did something happen to her? Nothing happened to her. She was the one who injured someone and said she was an orphan with no relatives or friends. She refused to cooperate with our investigation. We found Miss Ji's number on her phone. Please make a trip to the police station. Jinwan was slightly confused. Xia Tian did not want to have any contact with the Xia family in S City. This was not the first time she lied about being an orphan. But Xia Tian had injured him? How was that possible? She had just been discharged from the hospital. Her legs were still weak. How could she have the ability to injure someone? Jinwan didn't have time to ask. She quickly drove to the police station. When she reached the police station, she quickly walked in. The moment she entered, she saw Xia Tian sitting in the interrogation room by the side door. Her expression was indifferent as she stared at the police officer who was taking down her statement. It seemed like they had been facing each other for a long time. My apologies, Xia Tian is my friend. May I ask what exactly happened? Jinwan pulled a police officer aside and asked softly. The police officer glanced at Jinwan and then at Xia Tian, who was still in the interrogation room. As though he had seen something strange, he said, she injured a reporter and smashed his camera. After being brought to the police station, although she didn't resist, she didn't cooperate at all. She said she didn't know anything and even said she didn't have parents and that she was born from a rock. Her mouth is very tight. If I hadn't snatched her phone and found your number, she would most likely be sitting here staring at our police officer until tomorrow morning. Jinwan, she smiled awkwardly at the police officer and repeatedly apologized. She then entered the interrogation room and nodded apologetically at the police officer. She then moved closer to Xia Tian's side and lowered her voice to ask, didn't you just report to my studio today? Why did you suddenly get beaten up? As soon as Xia Tian saw Jinwan, she immediately glared at the little policeman outside the door angrily and said unwillingly, this bunch of talkative policemen. If they have any problems they can just come at me. Why did they call you here? What exactly happened? Jinwan glared at her. Xia Tian rolled her eyes at the light in the interrogation room and said in a low voice, "I went to report to your office in the morning, but when I arrived I found someone sneaking around your office for a long time. Then he went downstairs and hid outside Jinlin building. I saw that he had a video camera in his hand and I became suspicious. I went over to snatch the camera from him and flipped through it. I realized that it was full of photos of you. And it wasn't just near your studio. This person seemed to have been secretly following you for a long time. There are many photos of you." Jinwan's brows jumped. Her expression was strange. Why would he take photos of me? Chapter 184. Jinwan suppressed the suspicions she had toward the person who took the photos. "Since there's a reason for you to beat someone up, just tell me. Why are you so stubborn and unwilling to give a statement?" Xia Tian immediately rolled her eyes at the police officer in the interrogation room. "Who says the police are good for the good? I already said my leg was injured, but they still forced me into the police car and took me away. What's worse, they even confiscated my walking stick and said it was a weapon. They said that I was using my leg injury as an excuse to gain sympathy. What kind of police are they? Each and every one of them is like a block of wood and won't listen to what I say. It's obviously the person who took the photos secretly. Why did they lock me up here and interrogate me?" The police officer had clearly heard Xia Tian's complaint, but he still said sternly and expressionlessly, "Madam Xia, recording a statement doesn't mean a conviction. No matter what the truth is, it's true that you beat someone up. If you don't give a clear statement, the police can only use a more forceful method to execute you." Xia Tian rolled her eyes and turned to whisper in Jinwan's ear so that only she could hear, "Earlier on he was the one who forced me into the police car. Now he wants me to cooperate and give a statement. I won't let him off so easily." "Jinwan, big sister, is the point right now to be angry with the police?" Feng Ling, who was outside the police station, looked at the situation inside and turned to take her phone to make a call. "Mr. Mo, after all, Xia Tian really hurt someone. Right now, not only did she refuse to cooperate with the interrogation, but she was also waiting for the hospital's evaluation. The police station refused to let her go, so Jinwan decided to accompany Xia Tian in the police station. But she never expected Mo Jingshan would suddenly come here. When she saw Mo Jingshan's car, Jinwan stood up in surprise and looked out. Xia Tian completely ignored the oppressive atmosphere in the police station. When she learned that Mo Jingshan would actually lower himself to come to such a place, she immediately smiled at Jinwan with a gossipy expression. Jinwan had just walked out when she heard that the police were cautiously and respectfully explaining the situation to Mo Jingshan. She rushed forward. Mo Jingshan, who was negotiating with the police, saw her and immediately looked in her direction. Jinwan approached him and lowered her voice to say, "Xia Tian did this because of me. Did Feng Ling tell you about me at the police station?" Mo Jingshan did not reply. He looked at Jinwan's expression and saw that she did not appear to have suffered any grievances in the police station. He then turned his attention to Xia Tian in the interrogation room. His gaze was calm and composed as he held Jinwan's hand, calmly saying, "Wait for me in the car." "But Xia Tian hasn't. She will be released soon. Since I'm here, don't worry and leave it to me in?" Mo Jingshan's eyes were clear. In a place like the police station, Jinwan was indeed not as powerful as Mo Jingshan. She did not say more and returned to the car to wait. When he got on the car, Feng Ling followed him. Jinwan sat in the car and looked at Feng Ling. "Did you find out that I was followed and photographed?" Feng Ling only hesitated for half a second before answering truthfully, "Yes." Jinwan calmly glanced at her. "Why didn't you tell me in advance? That person has been following you for a long time, but he has been careful to keep his distance. The only things he could capture were photos of Mrs. Mo's daily life and work. There wasn't anything too personal," Feng Ling calmly said. "In order to make him give himself away, I intentionally made the security system in front of the studio malfunction so that the other party would lower his guard. I didn't expect that he would be unable to sit still so quickly. Originally, I wanted to take you down today, but I didn't expect Miss Xia Tian to discover it first. I also didn't expect Miss Xia Tian's temper to be so fiery. What's the other party's background?" Jinwan's tone did not sound heavy, but her light words carried extra weight. This time, Feng Ling was silent for several seconds and did not directly answer. "You can't say?" When Jinwan spoke, she acutely sensed that Feng Ling's gaze seemed to be directed toward the police station. She was looking in Mo Jingshan's direction. Feng Ling withdrew her gaze and still did not answer. Jinwan stared at her. "Feng Ling, although Mr. Mo is your true employer after all, you've been with me for the longest time. You should understand my character well. Although I'm not too persistent in getting to the bottom of things, nor will I make things difficult for you, I really hope that you can be more honest with me." Feng Ling was quiet for a moment. She watched Jin Wan's calm expression and softly said, "The other party's background is very simple. He's just an unknown reporter in High City. However, not long ago, his account suddenly received a transfer of 600,000 yuan. The sender is from Los Angeles, America." Speaking up to this point, Feng Ling looked at Jin Wan's narrowed eyes. "Mrs. Mo, if my guess is correct, the person behind him is the same person who sent the package." Jin Wan more or less guessed it. She directly asked, "You were once trained in a base in America, and you seem to have quite a good relationship with Nanhang and the rest. So, who exactly is this person, do you know?" This time Feng Ling quickly answered, "I don't know." The chill in Jin Wan's heart gradually rose. She understood Feng Ling's gaze. Although Feng Ling did not speak, she did not overdo it. However, Jin Wan could clearly feel that Feng Ling wanted to remind her of something, but she could not say more. After settling the matter at the police station, Jin Wan returned to the studio and called Xiao Ba over. She had Xiao Ba bring her the information on the delivery company in Los Angeles. She had to find that person. She had to find out who exactly it was. In the end, after Jin Wan finished her meeting and returned to the office, she heard Xiao Ba say, "Boss Nguyen, that delivery company actually closed down." Jin Wan paused in her movements and raised her eyes to look at her. "What?" Xiao Ba raised the information in her hands for her to see. "It's the company you asked me to investigate. Such a large international delivery company suddenly closed down a few days ago. Furthermore, their name has been removed from the American International Delivery Service Center. It's as though they disappeared overnight." Jin Wan took out the delivery receipt from the drawer and compared it with it. She then checked it on the computer. Indeed, it was as Xiao Ba had said. This international delivery company really did declare bankruptcy in Los Angeles a few days ago. The entire company was sold off in pieces, and the company's name was also removed. It had only been a few days, but an internationally renowned delivery company had completely disappeared just like that. Chapter 185. Just as she was thinking, Feng Ling suddenly entered with a large bouquet of red roses in one hand and an exquisite small bag in the other. After entering, she placed these two items on Jin Wan's desk. Jin Wan had yet to return to herself. She raised her eyes to see the large bouquet of flowers. "What's this?" "Someone sent it over earlier. They said it's for you. I've checked it and there's nothing wrong with it." Feng Ling looked at her. "For me?" Jin Wan pointed at the roses on the table, her gaze surprised. Feng Ling nodded and did not say more. She turned to leave. "Wow. There must be hundreds of them, right?" Xiao Ba laid on Jin Wan's desk with an envious expression. "Who sent them? So romantic. Is it a gift from COMO? How would Jin Wan know who sent them? It wasn't her birthday, nor was it a special holiday or an anniversary. Besides, she had only found out about the incident at the police station this morning. It had only been a few hours since Mo Jingshan sent her back to the studio. Why would he suddenly send her flowers and gifts? Mo Jingshan was not schizophrenic. Jin Wan picked up the large bouquet of flowers in confusion. The delicate roses emitted the unique fragrance of roses. Each one seemed to have been carefully selected. With one glance, she could tell that they were of the highest quality. Not only were they expensive, even the outer packaging looked very girlish. It was made of pink paper. This color, Jin Wan could not help but recall the pink gown Sheng Yihan had specially prepared for her. Many years ago, when she was in her teens, she would often follow Ji Hongwen to various events. She would often wear pink, whether it was her gown, shoes, or bag. At that time she was indeed pink at heart. However, as time passed, she gradually lost her preference for such a girlish color. There was no gift card in the bouquet. She could not see the message or name. She casually picked up the exquisite small bag by the side. After opening it, she saw that it was a square gift box. When she opened it again, she saw that it was a white, handmade, luxury watch box. Until she saw that it was Van Cleef & Arpels' latest Pink Lady's watch. When Jin Wan saw the design on the watch, her expression immediately turned ugly. There was a card in the box. When she flipped it over, she saw several lines of black handwriting. Van Cleef & Arpels' Lover's Bridge, the most romantic watch in the world. The boy showed the minutes and the girl showed the hours. As the minutes and seconds approached, the boy anxiously counted the minutes, and the girl calmly counted the hours. Finally, when it was close to midnight, they could hug each other for a minute. "Good luck, my girl." There was no signature or name on the entire card. But this was Sheng Yihan's handwriting. Jinwan recognized it. A few years ago she had seen his handwriting in the Ji family. Later, when Xia Tian was hospitalized, she had also seen Sheng Yihan's diagnosis and medical records. What a beautiful watch. Little 8 was surprised, and when he saw the logo, he said with stars in his eyes, "Oh my God! It was actually this brand. Super expensive." Before Xiaoba finished speaking, she was surprised to see Jinwan casually throw the large bouquet of roses into the wastebasket and then push the box of watches out. "You like it? You can have it." 3 drops of sweat rolled down her forehead. This was such an expensive thing. How could she dare to accept it? Jinwan looked at the watch box on the table and fell silent. A few days ago she had just gone back to expose Shinharu. Today Sheng Yihan suddenly sent her flowers and a gift. What did he mean by this? Was he using this method to greet her from afar? Or was it a declaration of war? Was he reminding her that he was unhappy that she had ruined his plans? Was he deliberately sending her this so-called lover's bridge to keep her at bay? The entire office was filled with the fragrance of roses. Jinwan was originally not affected by these things. After a while, she abruptly stood up and walked out. She opened the door and called Xiaoba back. "Take the flowers out and throw them away. Spray some air freshener in the office. Call me when the smell has dissipated." After speaking, he walked out. Xiaoba was dumbstruck. Even now, she did not know who had sent the flowers and gifts. She also did not know why Jinwan was not happy at all after receiving these things. Instead, it was as though she had eaten a fly. She did not dare to tarry. She returned to the office and followed Jinwan's instructions to clean up the flowers. She then put on some air freshener and opened the windows. She turned back to look at the watch box on the table. She felt that this thing was really too expensive. If Boss Nguyen was unhappy and asked her to take care of this thing, she would not know how to deal with it. Thus, she directly placed the watch box into Jinwan's bag. She then clapped her hands with a relaxed expression and left the office. The result of Xiaoba's actions was that Jinwan brought the watch home with her without knowing it. When she finally realized it, it was already after her shower. Mo Jingshan came from the bedroom next door. When he saw the bag Jinwan had thrown by the bedside, he saw a white watch box inside. His deep, cold eyes darkened. He walked over with a cold, handsome face. When he approached, he saw the watch box in the bag. He took it out and saw that it was printed with Van Cleef and Arpels, the symbol of Lover's Bridge. It was a luxury brand owned by a famous French family of jewelry and watches. He took the watch out for a look. The sound of water in the bathroom had stopped. Jinwan walked out while drying her hair. When she saw him and the watch in his hands, her footsteps paused. She stared at him and then at the watch. Her eyes were filled with obvious surprise. Why was this watch here? Didn't she ask Xiaoba to take care of it in the morning? Why did she bring it back? Jinwan placed the towel on her head down. She suddenly felt awkward. The man's figure stood by the bedside. His heavy and cold gaze met hers for 3 to 4 seconds. "Who gave it to you?" Mo Jingshan asked softly. However, it was clear that there was no need for her to answer. He already knew the answer. After all, Feng Ling no longer dared to hide anything about Jinwan. Jinwan must have already told him about the gift she received today. Although she did not intentionally bring this watch back, under his gaze, Jinwan still felt that it was a huge mistake not to open the window and throw the watch out of Jinlin building. Seeing that Mo Jingshan was still staring at her, Jinwan scratched her hair. Things like receiving gifts are usually one-sided. Furthermore, I didn't intend to bring this thing back. Back then, I wanted to have someone throw it out, but Mo Jingshan calmly cut her off. "It's her. Jinwan." It was Sheng Yihan. Chapter 186. I didn't want to keep it. You can't blame me. My assistant probably saw that the watch was too expensive and didn't dare to throw it away, so he stuffed it into my bag. I didn't notice it before I came back, Jinwan explained helplessly. Mo Jingshan looked at her for a moment and did not speak. He threw the pink watch into the trash can. Jinwan did not even look at the watch, thinking that it was fine to throw it away. It suited her. Anyway, she really didn't want to keep Sheng Yihan's things. At this time, Mo Jingshan received a call from the company and turned to enter the study. 10 minutes later, the door to the study was opened again. The man came out expressionlessly and then dug out the watch from the trash can. He held the watch and walked out. "What are you doing?" Jinwan asked in confusion. When Jinwan walked out, she saw that Auntie Chen had brought up a cup of water. Mo Jingshan saw it and casually threw the watch into the cup. Steam rose from the cup. Silently, the time on the watch was fixed at 9 o'clock p.m. The boy and girl in the watch were at an untouchable distance. From now on they could no longer approach each other. Auntie Chin held the cup with a surprised expression. She did not understand what was going on. Because Jin Wan's body was cold, she would bring up a cup of water at this time every day. When it was no longer so hot, she would let Jin Wan drink it. She promised to let her drink a cup of warm water every day. But today, Jin Wan stood by the door, the corner of her lips twitching. Once and for all. This method was indeed Mo Jingshan's. A watch of this price was not afraid of water or falling, but it was afraid of boiling water. Mr. Mo. Auntie Chin stared at the cup in a daze. This watch. Throw it out. Mo Jingshan's tone was cold. Auntie Chin nodded. Anyway, this cup of water could not be drunk. She took it downstairs quickly and planned to pour another cup and bring it up. Before Mo Jingshan returned to the room, he glanced at Jin Wan. What are you looking at? You can't bear to? Jin Wan chuckled. After all, it was urgent for her to go to T-City. She could not provoke him at this time. Of course I can bear to. I wanted to throw it out during the day, she said as she followed him back to the room. After closing the door, Mo Jingshan saw that she seemed to have something to say and glanced at her indifferently. Smiling so obsequiously, are you afraid that I won't let you go to T-City? Was there a need to always see through her like this? The corner of Jin Wan's mouth twitched. It's indeed about to start. Since you've decided to go, just focus on your studies. Someone will arrange everything else for you. Mo Jingshan's tone was still unfriendly. He had clearly given in to her so-called grand goal and desire, but it was clear that Sheng Yihan's blatant provocation made it difficult for him to soften his tone. Really? Then I have to hand over all the projects in the studio as soon as possible. Several subordinates and assistants in my studio have gone to Xia Tian's place tonight. I'll have a video conference with them tonight and explain it well. Looking at Mo Jingshan's unhappy face, Jin Wan stepped forward to hold his arm with a pleading expression. Mo Jingshan coldly glanced at her. Seeing that she did not show any emotions due to Sheng Yihan's matter, he calmly said, "The computer is on. Go." Jin Wan glanced at the time. It was almost time for the meeting with Xia Tian and the rest. Seeing that Mo Jingshan was planning to let her off, she did not argue with her. She suddenly smiled and hugged his neck, pulling him down. She forced him to lower his head and planted a kiss on the corner of his lips. After kissing him, she was afraid that he would turn around and throw her onto the bed. She slipped out of his embrace and quickly turned to enter the study. Jin Wan sat in front of the computer, having a video conference with Xia Tian and the rest. According to the schedule, they would be leaving for T-City the day after tomorrow. Although the 3 months of study would pass in the blink of an eye, the studio was currently in the development stage. Everything was her blood, sweat, and tears. She had to explain it well. As Mo Jingshan often had video conferences with overseas partners, the video camera on the computer in his study was very high definition. From the screen on Xia Tian's side, Jin Wan seemed to be sitting opposite them. During the meeting, Xia Tian held the proposal that Xiao Ba handed to her. Don't worry. In the next 3 months, I'll definitely help you secure the #1 sales position in High City's real estate industry. I've seen the land and properties you've acquired and the series of plans you're about to carry out. You really have a good eye. You've already laid these cornerstones. I don't need to exert too much effort. As long as you can safely and steadily hold the current ones in the studio, it will be enough. You have to have confidence in us. Jin Wan supported her chin with one hand and looked at them. Of course I have confidence. High City's geographical location is also unique. I'm not in a hurry about sales. Now, the most important thing is the Human Resources Department of the studio. Help me keep a close eye on the people recruited by the Human Resources Department in the future. We don't need too many people, but we must use every one of them. Then they briefly discussed the room for improvement of the studio. Several colleagues who were at Xia Tian's home pointed out the small problems in the studio's operation and other aspects that were easily overlooked. Jin Wan also seriously discussed with them how to increase the probability of converting the real estate and the current resources under the studio's name into liquid capital without any loss, and how to be more flexible. After a while, Xia Tian on the screen suddenly looked surprised, and Xiao Ba also suddenly looked at Jin Wan with a startled expression. Jin Wan looked at them in confusion and subconsciously turned back, but she didn't see when Mo Jingshan had entered the study. The man was holding the boiled water that Auntie Chin had brought in. Right now the temperature of the water was just right. He stood there, and the warm light in the study was reflected on the glass in his hand. He didn't seem to want to interrupt her ongoing meeting. However, at this moment the people on the other side of the computer were staring straight at him. Xiao Ba suddenly exclaimed, "In my lifetime I've actually seen COMO in real life." Jinwan, dash. Chapter 187. That man who only needed to stand there quietly to attract everyone's attention was really the living Mo Jingshan. She had always heard of his name but never seen him. Jinwan was usually low-key and would never specially let Mo Jingshan appear in the studio. At this moment, the people on the other side of the computer were staring at him like wolves and tigers. Mo Jingshan's expression was calm. He walked over, placed the glass by Jinwan's hand, and then glanced at the proposal displayed on her computer screen. "You came at the right time. Help me take a look at these places." Jinwan hurriedly pointed at the screen. "These are the areas we are considering to develop, but because the previous two companies of the studio have not performed well, many friendly companies are only cooperating with the studio for the sake of MO Corporation. Except for the BGY group a few days ago, the rest are still in the wait-and-see stage, so the concentration and popularity of these projects are not very optimistic." Jinwan nodded and said, "You're right." Speaking up to this point, Jinwan turned to Mo Jingshan. "In fact, I can understand. Right now the property market is indeed not very optimistic. Coupled with the studio's previous performance, if it weren't for your intervention, I'm afraid we would be a group of children with no one to care about us. So now we have to go through the invisible obstacles." Xia Tian could not hold it in any longer and suddenly said, "Xiaomo, the one who has to overcome the obstacles step by step is your family's Jinwan, not me. She's so concerned about her face that she has to suffer. There are many things that she is unwilling to ask for your help with. Look, right now we just want you to help us draw a few key points and choose a few projects for us. She can't even ask for such a small request." Xia Tian tapped her fingers on the computer table and ignored Jinwan's glare. She continued to say, "You have to know that in the next few months, this studio will be under my management. My leg is still crippled. Xiaomo, please be kind and give us some advice so that we don't have to take a detour and we can all be at ease. Jinwan can also rest assured. You don't want her to worry about things here every day when she's away to study, do you?" Mo Jingshan did not look at the people on the computer screen. He only indifferently glanced at the little woman who was sitting in front of the computer and drinking water with an awkward expression. He opened his mouth, and there was a hint of gentleness and indulgence in his indifferent tone. "Briefly repeat what you just discussed." Jinwan was about to put down the glass of water she had just taken a sip of, but Xiao Ba, who was sitting opposite her, eagerly took the information in her hand and began to give a brief account. Because she had already given the information, Xiao Ba's words were clear and orderly, and perhaps because the other party was Mo Jingshan, Xiao Ba didn't dare to say any nonsense and spoke concisely. After speaking, Xiao Ba looked up with admiration and said carefully, "Xiaomo, do you need me to show you the details of the plan again?" "Thank you for your hard work. No need," Mo Jingshan calmly said. His gaze had already landed on the page of the plan on Jinwan's computer screen. He bent down and placed his hand on Jinwan's. She was currently holding the mouse and he held her hand and clicked on the mouse several times. He flipped through several pages of the plan and saw the plan inside. A moment later, Mo Jingshan lowered his gaze and watched Jinwan's face illuminated by the computer screen. He looked at her exceptionally serious expression and chuckled softly. His tone was slightly indifferent and filled with indescribable doting. "Circle the fifth item on the third page. For the next month, focus on this project." Jinwan immediately flipped the plan back to the page he had mentioned and focused on it. "As expected, this piece of land was purchased by me at the end of last month. Right now, High City's Tourism Bureau is planning to develop this area into a tourism development zone. I originally planned to suppress this area for a period of time, but the Tourism Bureau has sent out many people to interfere with the price of the land nearby. Thus, this area should be regulated and can't be suppressed any longer. We should stop while we're ahead." As Mo Jingshan helped her highlight the key points of this project, he marked all the areas that included the predicted price increase. His meaning was clear and also gave her a hint. "Is it because you have someone in the city's tourism bureau and know that they will only release the regulation policy in a month, so you want me to suppress it for at most another month?" Jinwan asked. Mo Jingshan, "Yes." It was just a single word. He said it lightly, yet it was as it should be. This was a very simple logic. Even if Jinwan had the ability to predict the future 10 years from now, she could not do everything perfectly. On the other hand, Mo Jingshan's status was different. In this enormous high city, Regardless of whether it was the business or political world, he had a certain amount of connections. He could obtain the most direct and accurate plans in advance, and it was many times more effective than her so-called prediction ability. Thus, a man like him was truly terrifying. Not to mention turning back time by 10 years, even if he was thrown into the torrent of history, he would still be able to control everything. He could always look at the entire situation and stand at the top of the pyramid. When Mo Jingshan helped her highlight the key points, he gave her a concise and comprehensive analysis. Jinwan listened attentively. In the study, only their voices could be heard. The video was on the entire time. Xia Tian, Xiaoba, and the others could be described as absolutely quiet. Wasn't the legendary Mo Jingshan aloof, cold, and unreasonable? But right now, the dignified CEO Mo did not pay any attention to anyone on the computer ever since he entered the study. His eyes were only focused on Jinwan, and they were vaguely filled with warmth and patience. Even when Jinwan's thoughts coincided with his, there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. How was this the cold and aloof CEO Mo? He was clearly a top-quality warm man who was like a rare treasure, but it was clear that this treatment was only for Jinwan alone. As for the others, they were not even worthy of his attention. After Mo Jingshan finished highlighting and analyzing the key points, Jinwan simply sat in front of the computer to carefully rearrange the information that had been highlighted. Mo Jingshan rubbed her head twice and did not say anything more, turning to leave. So envious, so blissful, what should I do? I want to fall in love. This is practically a royal level of dog food. As the study door was closed, the computer finally began to resound with voices. Even Xia Tian could not help but click her tongue. Not bad, Jinwan. Sure enough, today is different from the past. Even the dog food of the century has been stuffed into my hands. Jinwan earnestly typed as she said, earlier on the key points that he mentioned, did you all hear it? I'll edit the documents here and send them to you. Let's continue talking about this. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.